Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joey Milne, and I am the new CEO of Alzheimer's LA. I joined the organization about 7 months ago, and am so honored to be here today. Thank you all for joining us. I would like to extend a very special thank you to our incredible Alzheimer's Los Angeles staff and our distinguished speakers today, whose dedication and hard work have made today's event possible. A big special thank you to Cassandra Rivera, our Senior Care Counselor for Early Stage Programs, who will be moderating today's program, Xiomara Lara, Care Counselor for Early Stage Services, Carmine Tabagon, our Development Manager, and Ricky Ayala, our IT and AP Coordinator. Each of them has worked so hard over the past several months to ensure that today's conference is a success. We would also like to thank ASI, Eli Lilly and Company, and Marcia and Elliot Sainer for their generous support of today's conference. We are equally grateful to the attendees whose donations help us further our mission. If today's program inspires you and you feel motivated to support our work, there is still time to make a contribution through our website. And please know that every gift, regardless of size, helps us continue providing vital services and support to individuals and families affected by memory loss. Alzheimer's Los Angeles has long recognized that individuals experiencing memory concerns may feel frustrated, isolated, and uncertain about the future. This conference was created based on years of experience, listening, and learning from people living with memory loss and early-stage Alzheimer's disease, as well as their care partners. Our first early memory loss conference was held in 2007. Since then, we have continued to evolve, developing and refining programs and models of care to better meet the needs of individuals living with memory loss and those who support them. Today, we are proud to offer this important event virtually, allowing us to reach even more families. While we may not be together in person, I am confident that you will find today's experience informative, meaningful, and inspiring. If you are interested in learning more about our specialized support groups, educational programs, or counseling services for individuals living with memory loss and their care partners, we encourage you to reach out. Many participants have shared that these programs have been truly life-changing. I hope you find today's presentations helpful, informative, and empowering. And with that, I'd like to bring Cassandra back to introduce our first expert speaker.
Thank you, Joy. Good morning, everybody. My name is Cassandra Rivera, and I'm the Senior Care Counselor for Early Stage Services here at Alzheimer's Los Angeles. It is truly an honor and privilege to serve individuals and families navigating memory loss, and I'm grateful that you have chosen to spend part of your day with us. Throughout today's conference, I'll be helping guide through the program, and during our breaks, I'll share more information about our services, support groups, and resources available to you all. My hope is that you leave today having learned something new, feeling supported by this community, and most importantly, feeling empowered with knowledge, tools, and hope for the journey ahead. Thank you for being here, and let's get started. Our first speaker is attorney Caprice Collins, founder and managing attorney of Collins Law Group. With decades of experience in estate planning, elder law, trust, and long-term care planning, she has dedicated her career to helping families protect their independence, assets, and future wishes. Today, she will share practical steps individuals and families can take to plan early for memory changes and create greater peace of mind for the road ahead. Please join me all in welcoming Attorney Caprice Collins. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to this wonderful conference that we're all attending this morning, this Early Memory Loss Conference by Alzheimer's LA. I'm so proud and honored to be asked to be a speaker on this vital conference for our community. And today, I hope we have a very wide audience of individuals that are attending, that we have obviously people who may be affected by the disease, but also their friends and their families, their caregivers, their advisors, any professionals affiliated with them, including doctors, bankers, pastors, ministers, rabbis, because all of us as a community have a responsibility for treating people with respect, to understanding their situation, and sharing information we might have. We are right now about ready to join an epidemic of baby boomers becoming seniors. And as a result of that, what we're going to be seeing is higher numbers of people needing the information that Alzheimer's LA offers with without cost to anyone. And so I hope today, as a result of you participating in this, that one thing that you take forward is that you learn something valuable and that you can share it with others about the location of this wonderful resource in our community. With the medical advances that have occurred since the baby boomers were here, longer lives being lived, it's expected that will be a greatest number of elders coming within the next 20 years, and that unfortunately many of them may be affected by Alzheimer's. I also like to show gratitude to Alzheimer's LA for what it does. And if any of us are givers, then please feel free to make Alzheimer's LA a part of that giving community that you support, because they are doing so much for our community. So let me start off by saying that as a woman, I am at greater risk for this disease as any other woman that is attending today. And those of us of the minority community, Black and Brown, are also at greater risk. There are lots of research going on right now about why we are, and it's inconclusive, but there's some interesting theories out there as to why. One thing for sure is that we can have some control over this by just lifestyle changes. So I know we're going to have a medical professional speaking later on, and I know there will be more information about that, but simple diet, exercise, lifestyle types of changes can really have an effect on whether Alzheimer's will be, unfortunately, a part of your life. So the name of our presentation is Planning Early for Memory Changes, Independence and Peace of Mind. Next slide. While I am a proud second generation native of Los Angeles, my family came here in the early 1900s. I attended the Los Angeles Unified School District. I went to the University of California at Irvine, and then eventually Harvard Law School. And my interest through all that was public interest law. So I share all that with you today because I want you to know how aligned to the community here in Los Angeles I am, and my family has been, and how important it is to me to be able to share knowledge that I have. I'm very proud to say that I've helped thousands of families here in Los Angeles plan to not have complications at time of incapacity and death. And I've served those families after their plans to help prevent things and to make things easier for the families. The best way that I've been able to serve my community is through education. So I would like to call out my own website, collinslawgroup.com, because we have excellent educational resources there, the website itself. We also have free seminars on planning. We have seminars that we provide here free in our office once a month, and then seminars that are on demand. And that just means you go to our website under events, look for the on demand button, and then go ahead and sign up for that seminar. You'll get a link from us that will allow you to watch our seminar from anywhere. And I really suggest for those of you who may be acting in a caregiving role or others who want to have their family members be aware of ways that planning can be done, this is a great way to do it as a group at home or even apart from each other. Anybody who does that comes to either one of our in-person or attends an on-demand has a free consult with me personally. So I want to make it clear right now that I also want to share with Alzheimer's being a free resource to the community. Advance, please. I come to you not only as a legal professional, but as a person who has gone down the journey that many of you have either just started or are completing. And that is that I've been a caregiver, a mother, and a daughter And I have there a slide where there's four generations of women, me being the right side, my great grandmother, Frances Delancey, who was a child of a slave, being on the left, my grandmother next to her, Althea, who actually did develop Alzheimer's in her 80s, my mother next to me, Yvonne, who I cared for 10 years of her life when she had Alzheimer's, and then myself. Both my grandmother and mother had Alzheimer's, and unfortunately, based on that, it is most likely that I may also develop the disease. Next slide. So I'm speaking to you today, ladies and gentlemen, not just as an estate planning attorney with the Collins Law Group, but as someone who has gone down this road personally for a 10-year period from 1998 to the year 2008. I cared for my mother, Yvonne Collins, who was there with me in the photograph celebrating her 95th birthday. My mother and I were as close as any two people could be. We traveled together. We enjoyed the same kind of music, entertainment. She was my best pal. And so we went into this journey being that best pals. My mom was a very hardworking woman, very independent, very caring. And how I first became familiar with her memory loss had to do with a phone call that I received from my mother's auto insurance agent, who told me that my mother was going to no longer be insured by their company. And I said, why? What's the problem? And she said, well, your mother no longer has a driver's license. And of course, I was shocked. I wasn't shocked that a insurance agency would no longer be, or a company would no longer be able to insure my mother without a driver's license. But when I got to my mother's home that evening, I questioned her as to what happened about her driver's license. And she told me that she had gone to the DMV to take the test, the driving test, and that she had failed. And she made it very clear she wasn't going back. And I said, wait a minute, Mom, that happens. Some of the laws may have changed. Let's just freshen up. You and I'll study over the weekends, and we'll get you so you're ready to go in and take it again. And she said, no, I'm not taking it anymore. I didn't pass it. I'm not taking it. And so I explained to her, I said, well, Mom, you cannot drive without a driver's license. And if you can't drive without a driver's license, no insurance company will insure you. And so therefore, you won't be able to continue driving on your own. And what my mother said to me then was really the first sign. And I think this is something that I'd like everyone to be alert to, that something was wrong. She said to me, well, other people do. And this was like the antithesis of my mom. My mom was a very law-abiding, respectful, never skirted the law type of individual. And for her to share that, oh, other people drive without driver's licenses and insurance, so, why not me, really shocked me. And I think that was the very first sign to me that she had a change in her perceptions. Not long after that, I would say within that same year, I came to her home, which either myself or my husband visited daily. My mother took care of my two young children from times they were 6 months to time they entered preschool for each of them. So we were commonly coming to the house. And I came to the door and I noticed a posting of a foreclosure notice on her door. And of course, again, I was taken aghast. I was in shock. What's this? I had worked in real estate over the years as a lawyer, and I knew what this notice was and where it came from and what happened before it. And I went into the house and I said, Mom, now I'm really, acting concerned. What's going on here? Why haven't you been paying your mortgage? Well, my mother told me, she said, well, I've been getting these notices from this company asking me to pay them, but I never made a loan with these people, so I'm not paying them. And I said, well, Mom, you probably also received notices that the loan had been sold. I said, that's a common thing in the lending industry, but didn't you notice that your loan payment was still the same? You haven't paid your loan off in full. In fact, my mother was only $1,000 from paying off a 30-year mortgage. And she just kept repeating me, I don't owe any money to that company and I'm not paying them. So here was a lady that had been a very hard worker who had a professional career working in accounting for Pac Bell, who had been so good at doing tax returns that she did individuals' returns every tax season. This was the lady that all of a sudden was telling me that it would be okay to drive without a driver's license or insurance, and that because the company that she got a notice from about her mortgage wasn't the very same that she had made her loan with, that she wasn't going to pay them. Well, of course, I took care of it. I paid the mortgage off. In fact, my mother owned less than $1,000 on her mortgage. But when I think about the jeopardy that my mother could have been in on either two of those things, one, driving a car without a license and insurance, and potentially losing her home to foreclosure over a mistaken belief that she no longer owed money on her mortgage, is really, really, I think, a wake up call for all of us to understand that when dementia first strikes us, it may not be in the most obvious ways that we've been taught. Like, they forget things, or they wander away, or they get combative, or something that, yes, may happen in some cases, but it didn't happen in mine in any of those. Next slide. What's even worse is that while it was very distressing, I really didn't know where to go for help. I wasn't familiar with Alzheimer's LA, and I should have seen it coming because my grandmother had experienced Alzheimer's very briefly before she passed away at age 86, but we knew something had been wrong with her thinking processes prior to her death. Now, this was back in the 80s, and Alzheimer's wasn't being bantied around and wasn't as well known as a disease back then, at least for the general public. But I really believe I should have seen it coming. So, as a journey with my mother and her care started, she obviously wanted to stay in her home to the end of her life. And I did everything in my power to try to keep her in her home. I first started off by having someone come in 3 times a week to just take care of, general cleaning around the house, and take my mom by car to whatever she wanted to do, bank, shopping, doctor's appointments. But my mother resisted me all the way. She did not want, really, she didn't need this person. Why was this person coming? And I had to, stay strong. Of course, I heard every day that I had taken her car away from her. And, but again, I had to stay strong, resolute. And, this experience was something that, watching her change, I had to make some difficult decisions along the way to coordinate her care, to balance my needs with those of her needs. And so the pivotal factor that changed all that for me was that one evening, my husband would go by every day coming home from work and pick my mother up from her home to bring her to our home to have dinner, watch TV a little while, and then take her back. And on that evening, that day, I had spoken to my mother. She sounded a little tired. And when my husband went to pick her up, she didn't answer the door. And so he called me, and I said, well, honey, I think she's a little tired. Why don't we just, let her have a good night's rest? I'll go there tomorrow morning. Thoroughly believing that, I waited to the following morning to go to my mom's house. Going to take her some breakfast. And when I got to her home, I went inside, and my mother wasn't inside her house. And there now I'm becoming alarmed and desperate, thinking the worst thing possible. I go outside, however, and I find that my mother is laying in her pajamas on a hard, cold cement slab in her backyard. And thank God my mom was alive. My mom was conscious. She couldn't tell me how long she had been out there. But as a result of that particular event, my mother never stayed in her home again. And it was very hard for the 10 years between 98 and 2008 to, to try to keep her um, happy with the situation, which was the last thing that she wanted. But I had attempted pretty much everything else to keep her in her home, to provide her care. And I know that through the journeys that so many of my clients and their families have had, this is a common thing of, wanting to respect the wisdom of your family member, their independence, and not wanting to disrupt that by letting them do what maybe is not in their best interests. Next slide. I think that many of us, like myself, could fail in that kind of moment where it's quite clear that there's things that need to be taken care of for a variety of reasons, and I see this quite often as to family members, kind of justifying the reason why they're not taking more action towards helping their loved one. That it's not serious enough. They can still get around. Someone may drop food off once a day. Someone may take them to their medical appointments. But I think what has to really be built is, a realization that this is a red flag that should be attended to as such and really should be discussed with medical professionals, organizations like Alzheimer's LA, which has a wonderful hotline that you can call at any time to discuss with them and their counselors about what these symptoms may mean, what can be done as far as perhaps medically or otherwise, and someone who will understand what you're going through. So while we may want to respect the privacy of our elder, we need to be proactive when we see things happening that could be damaging. And I just thank the Lord that I responded the way I did. But had I had seen my mother fall before, and had I responded more quickly to that, my mother probably wouldn't have been found outside in her backyard, laying in her pajamas on a cold hard slab of cement. I would have done something earlier. Next slide. So everybody's experience is different here. And maybe yours will be a lot easier than mine was, or maybe, unfortunately, a little bit more severe. But at some time, we are going to need to stand up and be there for our loved one. And because this is an early memory loss conference, I really believe I'm talking to two very distinct audiences: those of you who have been recently diagnosed, and those of you who love them and care for them and are trying to help them through this process. What I want to make clear is that those of you who are being impacted by this disease, it's your voice we really respect and want to hear as much as possible. Like with my mom, your family, we want to protect your independence, keep you confident of your abilities as long as possible, and that the wonderful, loving legacy that so many of you provide to our families, we want to protect that too. So while we are talking about what the worst case scenario, we're hoping that by attending this conference today, you'll be able to begin to understand changes that you may be experiencing and how important it is to reach out, how important it is to perhaps cooperate with those who love you and trying to protect you. Next slide. So we're now going to get more to the technical legal aspect of my presentation today, because it's really three very important things that we're hoping for you to concentrate on. This is a time when, because this is early stage, you have the opportunity to make plans that would be respected by the courts, would be respected by your family, by other organizations like your doctors and such, that you can do now. So even when a person has been diagnosed with memory loss or even early stage Alzheimer's, does not mean that they do not have the capacity, as we call it under the law, to make decisions. And it is at this time, though, that it is imperative that decisions be made when things are at the very beginning. Three of the areas that are so important are, number one, your healthcare decisions. And we have in our state, we have what we call the Advanced Healthcare Directive. And why it's important now is that, you should realize that this diagnosis, that your health or the health of your loved one is being affected. And we do know that Alzheimer's is a whole body disease. It is not just a brain disease, and it will show up in different ways as it relates to other medical conditions. And you will want to now take the responsibility of deciding who it is you want to make these decisions for you. You also want to make sure that the money, the financial security that you may have worked so hard, that you are being protected in those areas too. And we're going to talk about today very specific kinds of risk being experienced by the elder community and what can be done about it. And then, your legacy, the stories that you have about your parents and your grandparents and aunts and aunties. This is a great time to perhaps sit down with a family member who loves the video and to take those stories for you to start sharing photographs and other mementos with other family members that you want to be shared and stored and honored. Next slide. So getting to the healthcare decisions, what happens when we have the opportunity to plan for our healthcare? As I mentioned, we have a state statutory form called the California Advanced Healthcare Directive. And that directive is really two parts. One part of it is if I am not near death, I'm just had a fall or I'm about ready to go into an operation or something, or I've just come out of a medical procedure and someone needs to make a decision for me, and this is not end of life decision making, who do I trust to make that decision for me? So that is the number one section of the Advanced Healthcare Directive. And, I talk about with my clients every day. And really, you want someone, obviously, that cares for you, but you want a cool-headed person, someone who is not going to collapse under, pressure, an emergency situation, but someone who would follow your wishes as you believe them to be in protecting you. And then the second part of that healthcare directive is when you yourself will not be able to make decisions, and it's not likely that you'll ever make another decision. And that's when we have to make our end of life choices. So this is a two-part process where we determine whether or not we would be placed on life support if we have developed a condition that is going to easily and early lead to our death. No coming back, no operation, no drug that will restore our health. We've lost consciousness, and to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, we are not going to regain consciousness. When we're in that state, would you want to be placed on life support is essentially the question. Would you want your life extended by artificial means? And that can mean a respirator, ventilator, feeding tube, dialysis, that is not going to restore health, but extend your life for some period of time. Those are the two major end-of-life choices that you can make, and they will be respected. They will be respected by medical providers. Your family members will not be able to change those decisions once you've made them. So these are the things that, this document is very valuable because it really does relieve confusion and potential family drama. I've planned for many healthcare professionals over the years, and they've shared with me what goes on in the ER or what goes on in the hallways of intensive care units, and how sometimes security has to be brought in because of the fisticuffs that arise between family members over whether a parent or grandparent is going to be taken off of life support or put on life support. So this is one thing that we can do that would definitely reduce the possibility of confusion and family conflict by making your own choice about those two things. Who do I trust to make decisions for me when I cannot, but they're not end of life decisions? And what are my end of life choices? These can be changed at any time. The document can be updated at any time. So if you change your mind, you're fully capable of changing your document. Next slide. So the earlier you plan, the more choices you keep, essentially. And I think that's one of the main key takeaways that I would like everyone to have from this presentation. When particularly we have been diagnosed with dementia, we should act promptly to make sure that any and all things that are important to us be done. And this planning is certainly part of that. Next slide. So when our memory changes, we definitely need to think that we've got to be more organized, and I really mean as to not only the person but to their family, as to how we monitor, how we assist the loved one with the disease. One thing I want to make really, really, really clear here is that our family member has become vulnerable. And even though you may not see it, they may be the same happy-go-lucky individual or the same serious searching for information individual. Those are outward appearances. And like with my mom, she was not giving me any kind of indication of her change and her judgment until those two incidents happened related to the car and to the mortgage. So it will sometimes not be apparent to us, but please observe your loved one early and continually from that point on. Next slide. Now, as was in my case, the first crisis was not medical. And I see this very, very much happen with my families, is that the first indication of there being memory loss or Alzheimer's is something that comes out of the blue that doesn't really relate to the medical condition. Financial mistakes being made, perhaps, overdrawing their bank account when they were always so organized and kept their record so clearly, not paying bills in the home, like my mother not paying her mortgage, which she knew exactly what the amount was that she paid every month, knew she hadn't paid it off, but all of a sudden decided that she wasn't going to pay it. Things were, people are coming to your loved one asking for assistance. We see this, unfortunately, in families often, where someone who has financial problems starts preying really on the person, the person with memory loss. Sometimes making them believe that they had promised them money or that they had done something to deserve payment for. Number one, again, is observation. Be observant of your loved one. Notice things when you go through their home. Look for things that are out of order. Maybe people calling the home that all of a sudden, who are these people that are calling, or people coming to the home, or some new relationships. But that crisis, like I suffered with my mom and her financial situation, again, was not medical. And what is also somewhat shameful is that I should have taken her to the doctor immediately. Her doctor should have diagnosed her with dementia after the fall that took place outside of her home. And yet I wasn't told that at those periods of time. Next slide. When we do start noticing that mom or dad or aunt or uncle, grandparent is not the same, that we've seen things that concern us, please do actually reach out to others, reach out to this organization, Alzheimer's LA. Reach out to your loved one's doctor. Let them know what you're seeing and ask for guidance in that. Sometimes our rabbis, pastors, ministers are pretty experienced with this in terms of dealing with families that are going through this. Look for help. And this wonderful organization that organized this today, Alzheimer's, is definitely should be high on that list. If you feel as though you're starting to experiencing some types of confusion or memory loss, then there are a couple of things here that I think hopefully you take away from this. And please be careful using your computers. I think the computer, while it is a great tool, is also an area where people are being victimized quite a bit. Please be careful where any person is asking you to send money or you're getting things from strange places that you're not accustomed to. We're going to go through this in more detail as we go through the presentation. But if you have questions about any of it, this is where you start sharing it with someone in your family to trust. And I really think that I would tell you that the key that I've seen of families being able to protect individuals and those individuals being able to protect themselves when they start having memory issues is that they have relied on a family member, friend, advisor to be kind of like their backstop. In other words, whenever they were confused or concerned about something, they went to this person who they had complete trust in to help them make a decision to talk about things that they were being offered or asked to do. So as soon as possible, find that trusted person and let that person be a second set of eyes and ears on things that you might be experiencing. Next slide. Again, I just mentioned, computers are a wonderful way of educating ourselves, staying involved with things, but they can be a very, very major source of deception. So please watch out when you're being asked to urgently click on something from people you think you know, but not really, or don't know at all. These are red flags. So let's go over some of the modern fraud schemes that are being offered or being, I would say, used to prey upon our elderly population. And actually, not just the elderly population, but all Americans are being introduced to these different scams. Well, the imposter scam is something that I've seen come across my computer, across my internet interface, where someone is pretending to be a bank that I supposedly have money in. And, I can just detect on the way that the logo looks or that the language is incorrect, that this is not something that is real. Please know that the IRS is never going to contact you through your computer. Um, what we all dread as people getting notice from the IRS, it always comes in a brown envelope through the mail. The IRS is real old school as it relates to giving any kind of notices to us as taxpayers. So anything like that from the IRS, Medicare, Social Security, they do not deliver important information just by a computer. So be cautious whenever you see these agencies who typically never use a computer interface to interact with you when you all of a sudden are getting something from them. Also, this idea with AI now being able to clone people's voices is very dangerous. I think this is an area where our government really does need to call into check as to how many of us are exposed to this and make this a legal practice. But there are things going on right now where they can actually take an image, like an image of myself, and through AI have me give a whole presentation that I didn't give simply by using my image, cloning my voice. So be careful when you see things that are just a little off to you or there's maybe some other second thought you're having about it. The one that I think is really heartbreaking to me are these romance and companionship scams. And you often read in the newspaper about perhaps a lonely widower being contacted by a beautiful young woman from a foreign country, desperate with problems there in her life, and requesting a relationship with this person, which eventually leads to requesting money from the victim. And it's why I call it heartbreaking more, even more than the other two kinds of scams, is because there's usually been developed some type of romantic attachment and some real belief that this person really has intentions to be with you over time, and then it leads to a financial ripoff. So all of a sudden, I'm starting to receive, relationship offers is something to be concerned about. And they're now doing it with famous people. They're, having people believe that, someone like Taylor Swift is now interested in some gentleman in the Midwest, or, Halle Berry is, out to start dating you. And as what we would consider as ridiculous that is, because of these scams being so effective, sometimes it does work out for them. Be aware also that I'm a licensed financial advisor, and be aware that in the investment industry, we're being taught and we're being highly regulated about how we contact individuals, just because of this, because of the fact that the internet is being so widely used to perpetrate these scams. So most legitimate advisors will not contact you by email. They will not um, text you, because we are prohibited from doing so unless we're being monitored by our individual companies. And so you will probably now, that would be a illegitimate reach out to you. And then last but not least on this slide is caregiver and insider exploitation. This is where it's really, really very, very sad, where you see someone in the family or someone in a caregiver role actually begin to intimidate or isolate or just take advantage of people financially. Next slide. So vulnerability is invisible at first. People may seem to be fine, they may sound normal. But one of the things I learned in one of the latest Alzheimer's conferences is that doctors no longer rely on things like testing people about who the president is and what day of the week. They really look to companions and family members who have daily interaction for more information about their condition. They're usually the best way for a medical professional to learn what might be signs of the disease. Next slide. I'm just going to say, as it relates to this, ladies and gentlemen, is that our brains are designed to respond to emergencies. That's how we survived, even from the prehistoric days. And so be aware that when you get some reach out to you when it's urgent, it has to be done today. This grandchild scam is something that was used, is something where they would tell a elder that their grandchild is and use the grandchild's voice, supposedly that they're in danger outside the country. And of course, with that kind of message, most people would be likely to open up their pocketbook. So whenever there is urgency involved in it, and you have to keep it secret, and you can't tell anybody else, it's probably a scam. Next slide. I just want to say that, Alzheimer's LA is this great organization, a trusted resource. Our hotline is always available, to know that when some of these things start happening, and people start getting concerned, to go to them to look for some direction. But when we're dealing with this as a family member, and those of you who are actually experiencing the disease, it can be overwhelming for sure. And that's why we need to have someone we trust to help take us back, pull us back a little bit, to understand what might be the situation. Next slide. This is something I have to kind of emphasize because I'll often hear a client say to me, particularly children, oh, grandma always was that way. She was always a little prickly. She never wanted to do this or that. And it's really clearly that the family is in denial. They really don't want to believe that their loved one has the disease, that there's more of what they're needing to be done to protect their loved one. It's kind of that push and pull. I love my grandma. She's always been great. Now I have to actually admit that she has a disease and I need to take more responsibility. So please do that. Please take that responsibility. Don't deny what you're seeing. Someone that we love is having difficulty. They're not the same, and we have to take on some responsibility for it. We need to question, is it normal for us? We apply the knowledge of how they've lived their lives, as I did with my mom with bill pay, and it quickly, was not normal. When you get to that point, then inquire about it with the doctor or Alzheimer's ALA. Next page. I'm very careful of this in my profession, caregiver exploitation. I often will have people bring their parents in for consultation for their estate plans. And my experience is that I generally won't allow family members in the meeting with the client until I've made a cognitive evaluation of the potential client. And I get a reason for the family member's involvement. It's not unusual that, elders rely on their children or grandchildren, but I do need to understand whether or not my proposed client really understands what they're about to do, because it's very, very serious. Next page. So when I evaluate my client's relationship with others and with me, I can really make sure that their wishes are respected, and I can help support them and the loved ones that they trust to assist them. And that is really important, is that when you do have that trust, you meaning a person being diagnosed with the loved one that you believe will help you. And that can be not just a person in your family, it could be a friend or someone else outside. Then it really helps all three of us to be able to make sure that the right things happen for you as time goes on. Next slide. So how do we do that? How does a law firm that deals primarily with elders making these plans do that? Well, we gather information at meetings. We take lots of detailed notes. We look at your financial statements. We make sure that we're getting the whole picture as relates to you, your family, your financial situation. And we want to establish documents as quickly as possible to honor you and to allow you to make choices like who will be in charge of my bank accounts, my financial accounts, my retirement accounts, if I, in some time in the future, cannot make those choices, and who will pay my bills at a time in the future when maybe I forgot about an important debt. And so by having that relationship with a trusted advisor, like an attorney or other professional, along with a family member that you want to be involved, it can make things a lot smoother by all three of us working together to protect you. Next slide. This is something that's real important that will help people from not being scammed, which is if you feel uncomfortable, please don't keep it secret. Legitimate institutions do not isolate people from their support system. Like I said, I do bring my clients in, generally a proposed client first, just to evaluate them as to their own cognitive ability. But once I feel comfortable with that, then I have no problem working with them and their family to be supportive to them. But when you have urgency being placed on you, and I see this happening with some people, just take a pause And we do that when we feel people are kind of overwhelmed about the decisions maybe they're being asked to make. Perhaps we have another or second meeting beyond that just to give them more time to make those decisions. Please don't transfer any kind of information while you're on the phone. If someone is asking you for a social security number, birth date, password, PIN, please never provide that either on the phone or through internet access. Those are very, very important things to keep secret. And when you ever want to make a financial decision, a major financial decision, like perhaps taking substantial money out of your retirement accounts, selling real estate, borrowing money on real estate, things of that sort, please make sure that you have a conversation, not only with the trusted person in your family, but with the professional, whether it be a lawyer, a banker, your financial advisor, someone who you've trusted over time, and get a second opinion before you make those pivotal decisions. Next slide. So this is just, again, those alerts that you should be aware of. When you feel that something is not right, just kind of stop and don't proceed further. And I think when you have a true family unit looking after a loved one, you can have a rule for a same-day response, that we don't leave our loved one who may be confused without attention for too long, and that we preserve any kind of evidence that might be necessary, excuse me, that in order to perhaps track that individual, that we contact the bank or financial institution directly as to perhaps some contact with our loved one. We also report things to financial institutions that we feel are suspicious. We can help save other people from the same thing that our elder may have experienced by doing that. Next slide. So our system is really not geared to gradual cognitive decline, and that's really what happens in Alzheimer's. People just don't wake up one day and then fully be in Alzheimer's. It takes time for the disease to progress, and all of the professionals that serve you, including your doctors, may not see the gradual shift that's taking place. That's why it is very, very important that a trusted member of the family be observant of our loved one and meet with those professionals like their doctors to make sure that they're aware of things that you see. And for you, people who may be going through this process of memory decline, to not feel uncomfortable about sharing things that you're thinking about, things that confuse you. Be aware that this is not a means to control you, but only to assist you. Next slide. Because cognitive decline may change some things, but it does not change your worth, your dignity, or your need for protection. And in those 10 years that I cared for my mother from 98 to 2008, all I remember, even though I was now managing all of her financial affairs, her medical appointments, all that I remember about that time was the joy that we had together as a family watching Dancing with the Stars with 3 generations sitting around enjoying dance and music. My mother's continued love of jazz music, her interest in gardening and cooking and so forth. Those are the things that people are going to remember about you. And whatever little blip that may have happened as regards to a financial mistake is not what you're going to be remembered by. Next slide. Well, this is something I want to mention. The last paragraph here entitled Keeping Track. I know myself, of course, being a business owner and a professional, that the world of the internet and business transactions are changing daily, and sometimes it's harder to remember various techniques and various ways that we have to interact in those issues. But the reality is we can help ourselves by just kind of keeping notes. So I would just advise you to keep track of things as they change. In other words, if you have to use now some other additional verification to get into account, or you've changed your passwords, please just take time to write it down and let it be a resource that when you come back to that particular task, you have something to give you a little information that you learned from previous interactions. It will make so much easier for you to not feel confused about moving forward. Next slide. So fraud prevention is dementia care. And we've talked a lot about here about financial fraud and the scams that are out there today and how we can safeguard things by, not feeling rushed, having those we trust help us through certain types of transactions, not responding to red flags that we should all be aware of. But, also preserving our cognitive health. And I know that there's going to be speakers about that today. This is equally important as all of this, strengthening our brains. And the way that our families actually interact with us regarding this will make our families even stronger if they show support during this pivotal time in our lives. Next slide. I'm going to skip to slide number 32, which says key takeaways. All right. So these are the things that I would like if you don't remember anything about this today, for you to remember that, next slide, that start the conversation early. And this is a great thing about this early memory loss conference that Alzheimer's has been doing now for almost 20 years now, this program, that is really pivotal, that when we first have that first inkling of memory issues, that we begin having conversations with our children, with our parents about finances and so forth, and that we normalize the way we do things with them, not as an act of control, but as an act of care, just like taking them to church on Sunday mornings or, their doctor's appointment. And for those that you who have siblings, I was an only child, so I didn't have that, but those of you who do, try to share that responsibility with other trusted members of the family. Next slide. It's also important for you to have these key documents prepared. In our state, if you have real estate, the best way to protect that real estate as far as planning for the future will be with a living trust. And there are many other reasons why living trusts are preferable in our state. Probate is a very destructive, but sometimes necessary procedure in the court system that we'd like to avoid. Having a last will is important, financial powers of attorney, and I've also explained to you a little bit more in detail what healthcare powers do, healthcare documents. Next slide. What I do want everyone to know is that if you have planned in the past, I congratulate you for being a responsible individual, but documents that are very old are not going to be your best friend. Number one, things change. Laws change drastically over time. Most financial institutions won't accept a power of attorney that's more than 3 years old. And that's usually the first document your loved ones will need to use to help you. And then there might be the case that you had loved ones that you trusted when you made a document 5 or 10 years ago, but they are unfortunately elderly now themselves. They passed away, or maybe they are in a state of dementia. So we have to look at these documents and take appropriate action. Next slide. And then for those of you helping people with this memory issues, watch for these red flags, changes in spending habits, new accounts, confusion about finances that didn't exist, pressure to make quick financial decisions. Next slide. Be proactive. Take proactive and preventive steps. I usually ask my clients to consolidate their accounts. Sometimes people will come in with 10 to 20 different checking, savings, CD accounts, and it is dangerous to have that many for purposes of identity theft and just confusion, opportunities for scams. Next slide. Then you'll also want to make sure you've organized everything that you have already prepared or are in the process of preparing, such as estate planning documents, your account statements, beneficiary designations, insurance policies, Social Security, passwords, access instructions for your accounts. Next slide. This is something that unfortunately does end up causing a lot of distress. Even when we have trust, we must make sure that they've properly been funded, meaning that the name of your trust is on the title to either the property and or account. Next slide. When should this type of planning come into issue? Well, it should come in at the very first diagnosis, the very first notice of the disease. But when we see repeated health incidents or hospitalizations, that's obviously a trigger, or increased reliance on family or paid caregivers is also one, declining cognitive and physical capacity. Next slide. So how to plan smarter, make sure that you follow the instructions regarding having your documents being made up to date with those people you trust, and having your evaluation by perhaps that trusted person, maybe your financial advisor, about the kind of things that are going to be there to protect you as time goes on. Certainly insurance is something we'll be looking for. Public benefits might also be pivotal in the future. Next slide. So my firm, Collins Law Group, not only are we as planning attorneys, we're also financial advisors. We have great CPA referrals, geriatric case manager referrals, and then we love to say that we're highly aligned with Alzheimer's LA. Next slide. So we do have those free seminars that I mentioned, on-demand webinars. Our website is in both English and Spanish, and free consults with me personally after the seminar completion. Next slide. So what we're here about today is making sure that your voice is clear, ladies and gentlemen. And so I'm going to go right now to starting up with the questions and answers, the questions that anyone here today has for me.
If anyone has any questions for Attorney Collins, you can also ask them in the chat, or just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask her. And we'll also make sure that if you have any questions after the conference that come up, that we'll be able to connect you with Attorney Collins to make sure that you feel well supported and understand the process.
Can we turn to the last slide, Cassandra? Because that's really what I want to end this with. And that is for thank you. There should be one more slide. There you go. I want to thank you all for participating in this early memory loss conference. It's been my honor to be your speaker today. Caprice Collins from the Collins Law Group. Our telephone number here is 310-677-9787. So if any of you would like to give me a call, please feel free. Do we have one question here, Cassandra?
Yes, I see that we actually, and this is an important one. It's one we get asked frequently, is do you have information in accessing VA services and benefits? Is that a service you all provide?
No, we're not VA experts, but we do have great referrals to those that are.
Okay, thank you. All right. We do have another question in the chat. Does a medical diagnosis by a doctor cause the doctor to remove their driver's license?
Yes, but that's not the only way. Now, all of us know that after age 70, we actually have to go to the DMV and actually be personally interviewed. I think we have to take a driving test again in order to continue with our license. So the DMV has a way of actually protecting others from people who are not qualified to drive. But a lot of the times, the DMV will receive a notice from a medical provider that the person should not be any longer driving.
Okay.
And I do believe even family members can, give an alert to the DMV in which they would simply just notify the person that they would need to come in and perhaps do another driving test.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And just one more from our Q&A box. It says, how do I protect my husband from problems yet let him continue to use the iPhone and computer?
Well, I do believe there's some apps that you can place on computers that actually require verification before someone can, let's say, get into a bank account. If you have fears that perhaps your family member is making transfers or withdrawals from that bank account, there are ways to have like a third type of source of verification, not just perhaps a password and a PIN, but something else. And as financial advisors, we use that quite a bit and it's available. So I would talk to your banker about it. But I think one of the things is to maybe decrease their availability of accounts that have large sums of money. I tell my clients to put everything that where they're saving in a trust account, which can be more accurately controlled by the bank than individual accounts. And that way, if someone goes through someone's checking account where they maybe have a couple of $1,000s, it's not such a detriment as maybe thousands of dollars from their retirement accounts or CDs or what being lost. So there's ways to consolidate the money in a safer form, and you should speak to your banker about it.
Okay. And then actually just one more. I'm actually going to combine the two questions that I see because I think they really overlap. Is that what happens if your family member doesn't want to talk about or make difficult financial decisions? How does someone do that in a legal capacity?
Well, unfortunately, we do, unfortunately, we do live in a democracy where we give each other a lot of rights to control things. But unfortunately, when we are not, when we lose the cooperation of a loved one that we see is vulnerable or who has been exploited already, the the system of conservatorship, there's a process in the LA County court system. It's actually a process in the same courts as a probate process. We call it living probate, where a family member can actually have the decision making of a person taken from them for both financial and medical decisions. And it's a pretty kind of cut and dry type of thing in the sense that, normally it's a process that has come from some kind of dilemma that has already occurred, unfortunately, and that there's proof of it, that they've been exploited or somehow, cause financial damage. And then the court system itself appoints a attorney to represent that person to protect their interests. And of course, doctors' certifications are presented to the court. And so the person who a conservatorship is being sought over is very well protected. Their wills, their as to what they want, will be addressed by the court, but ultimately it will be the court's decision, usually based on medical records.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Attorney Collins, for your time, for your valuable information. We look forward to our continued partnership. And for those that may have still had some unanswered questions, as I said, we'll get you connected to Attorney Collins, or we also provide those types of services through our individual care counseling, and we make sure that we get you connected to various attorneys that service your area and make sure that you feel supported. We know that legal planning and these questions can be a bit tricky, so we make sure that we get you connected to the right parties. So again, thank you, Attorney Collins. Thank you for being with us.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much for inviting me. Thank you all at the conference. I hope you continue to enjoy it.
Thank you. And now we're going to go step into our next speaker as we prepare to put up her slides and get her on camera. I'd just like to say it is my honor to introduce her, Dr. Bruna Martin Kleins. She's Assistant Professor of Psychology at Occidental College and Adjunct Assistant Professor of Psychology at the University of Southern California. Dr. Martin Kleins is a licensed clinical psychologist whose research and clinical work focus on emotional resilience, cognition, and helping individuals adapt to life's challenges with greater flexibility and well-being. Today, she'll be presenting emotional tools for self-care and managing uncertainty and memory loss, offering practical strategies to help individuals living with memory loss and their care partners navigate uncertainty, strengthen emotional well-being, and focus on what matters most. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bruna Martins-Kind.
Hi, everyone. So lovely to be here, and thank you to Attorney Collins for covering such interesting and important information for us to consider during this transition to memory loss with our loved ones. And, planning ahead can feel like something that can give us a lot of emotional calm. And my specialty kind of dovetails nicely into that. So I'd like to introduce kind of how I got into this area. So I myself uh, am a diabetic, and my entire life I've lived with a chronic illness. And so even as a youngster, I knew that I wanted to help others managing how they adjust to a chronic illness, living with something that has a lot of uncertainty in the picture. And went on to become a clinical psychologist that specializes in chronic illness management. And specifically, my main focus is on aging. And as we age, chronic illness oftentimes is something that we're managing in one way or another. And it's really lovely to see this conference come together around how memory loss is a chronic condition that, we can prepare for in many ways, and in many ways we can't expect exactly what's to come. So there's a lot of managing of uncertainty that happens. And I wear many different hats. You can see I'm affiliated with several colleges and universities. And I can explain sort of the many hats that I have. So on the one hand, I'm a clinical psychologist who's licensed. So I've worked in VA settings. I've worked in the community doing primary care work, working with people who are navigating chronic illness and what kind of tools actually help cope with the stress of being, having this diagnosis, how it impacts families. So a lot of times it's not only the individual that has the diagnosis, but also their caregivers and the people that are working with them within the family system. And so in my own personal life, I've also been a caregiver. My mother had a spinal cord injury, so I have both been patient and caregiver, and try to provide tools that can apply to both, right? To both family members who are working with the person who's just been diagnosed, as well as the person who's navigating this tough diagnosis and change to their identity, to the day-to-day routines that we're used to. It's not easy. And there are things that we can control. A lot of the things that Attorney Collins brought up are things that we can plan ahead. And then what do we do when we're actually managing uncertainty? So in my research that I've done at USC, and soon I will be continuing that at Occidental College, I've really looked at in the brain, how can we actually activate, right, tools that can help us reduce stress, reduce cortisol and stress hormones that can actually affect our health negatively by engaging in strategies, right? So different tools that we can engage in that give us a sense of empowerment when we are facing uncertainty, even if we can't change the situation itself. So there is a lot of work I've done over the last 15 years, both in terms of research as well as clinically and in my personal life, that involve coping with chronic illness. And today I'm going to share a few tools that I found especially helpful in my work with folks across the lifespan as they're adapting to chronic illness, and specifically with memory loss for all of you who are on this call. So one thing I want to highlight, oops, there we go. Sorry, there's a little bit of a lag, is that there's a lot of research that suggests that when we feel in control of a situation or we have agency, it really enhances our health and our well-being. So there's a classic work done by Ellen Langer who's a famous psychologist, who studied if someone is living in a hospital setting, and they're given a plant. Um, does the fact that they have control over when they water the plant, when they fertilize the soil for that plant, actually make them feel better when they are, impatient? And what she found is that for one group, they were allowed to tend to the plant on their own. They could control the watering schedule and all of this. And the other group, their nurses were taking care of the plant. So they had, not a lot of perceived control over the situation. And they found that the people that actually had control over when they took care of their plant in the room, even though it's the exact same plant, tended to feel less stressed. They felt a sense of um, greater energy, and their performance on little puzzles when they were in the study was higher than the group that didn't have that perceived control. So there's actual evidence to suggest that when we know what's happening, when we have expectations of what's to come, and we have agency, it helps us feel emotionally well, and it lowers our stress hormones in our body. And yet, a lot of times we don't know what's to come, right? And many of you right now are navigating a time that feels like this, right? There's uncertainty, and maybe we're assuming the worst, that something scary might pop up, that a bad outcome or something unexpected might be awaiting us the next day. And with chronic illness, a lot of times that's what happens, right? We don't know if we're going to have a good or a bad day. We might have changes happening as the illness progresses. And it is true that being anxious, right, like worrying about what's to come, is something that in nature, our biology is wired to be sensitive to that. When we're in the dark and we don't know what's there, our bodies assume that a snake, right, or something, a bear, some sort of predator might be there. And so that's a protective signal that can actually help us. But, and you're going to have to get used to humor being part of my presentation because that's how I roll. Is threat always, the assumption that something bad is going to happen, always a protective signal that is helpful? And although I can't play this video, your homework is to Google or, search on your own time videos of cats reacting to cucumbers or zucchinis. So here, the cat will do something like, oh, it's actually playing. Amazing. Here we go. Let's see. Yes. So the threat, is there a threat here while the cat is having its meal? No, but you can see its body is reacting as if it's very dangerous, right? So threat here is not really protecting you from a genuine danger, but the fear, right, that there might be something that looks like a snake in the surround is disrupting this cat's meal. It's making it more difficult to enjoy what it's doing, to remain calm. And so the idea of like, is it actually helpful um, to have this anticipatory worry or assumption that bad things are happening in our surround? I'll give you another, for instance. So this is a story from my own life. So quite recently, I went on a camping trip with my family, and we were all sitting around the fire. We were feeling the heat of the campfire on our skin. We're all grabbing our twigs and roasting marshmallows on the fire, making s'mores and sharing stories. When, it was a beautiful night, very nice weather. Um, Someone in our group noticed there was a pesky raccoon trying to break into our cooler. So the moment that this raccoon and its accomplice, its partner in crime, were seen, they started backing away and hid back in the woods. But this triggered kind of a shift in our family dynamic around enjoying our s'more time. Um, and what happened was we shifted our attention from the storytelling and the marshmallows and, singing songs to actually putting on our headlamps, trying to find other raccoons that were going to try to take our things, clutching our snacks for dear life, and being pretty uncomfortable and tense. And so what was a pretty relaxing time became an all-out raccoon hunt of anxiety for the whole group. And what happened was this enjoyable time. It's similar to the cats with the cucumbers, right? We were all jumpy, and it was difficult to continue engaging in this kind of family building quality time together. Now, I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with navigating the adjustment to memory loss? Well, sometimes our own fear of what's to come in terms of a chronic illness can feel similar to this raccoon fire, you know, campfire situation. And what I'm hoping to do is to bring not no attention to the raccoons, right? We still want to be prepared, know what's to come, get informed, but at the same time, make space for, like Attorney Collins was saying, the music that we share with our family, right? For the dancing, for the enjoying life, in addition to taking care of this chronic illness, so that it doesn't become our entire identity. And finding that balance is really challenging. And so today, I'm hoping I can share, how can we remain calm when we're adapting to cognitive changes, and how can we manage what's not controllable about what's happening to ourselves and to our loved ones, as we're navigating this journey. And I'm hoping, if you're able and willing to test these out with me, I'm hoping to share some tools, not just tell you about them, but actually do the tools together, so that we can learn some tools that can help us identify moments when we're feeling uncertainty and like that pressure to act or fix what's happening. So that resistance that we run into when we don't have an answer, or we don't have a solution to the challenge we're facing. And then how can we accept challenging emotions that naturally do come up as we're changing routine, getting used to kind of a new normal? And also resources that can help promote balance, not just within kind of your own toolkit, but really community resources that we can share. The last hat I didn't mention that I wear is that I train. I'm a teacher. And that's my passion. I love, getting more and more trainees who are getting their graduate degrees in clinical psychology, like myself, right, to learn how to work with individuals who are navigating that adjustment to chronic illness. And I'll provide you resources for absolutely free, no cost therapy, individual resources that you can tap into if you feel like you need extra support at this time. Okay, so the first thing is, it goes without saying that early cognitive changes can bring up a lot of different emotional responses, which we'll talk about today. There's no way that I could give a presentation and capture all of the emotions. So we're going to kind of hone in on a handful, but there are a lot of other emotions as well that you may feel. So things like feeling anger, right? Angry that this diagnosis is a thing, that it's part of our reality. Feeling resentful, right? Of maybe support we don't have from family members or doctors that we're working with. Sometimes we can feel lonely in the process, right? So these are just some examples. And when these emotions come up, a lot of times we might have this idea of I need to power through, or not address the emotion. And neglecting our feelings that come up when we're adjusting to chronic illness can actually reduce our sleep quality, make us more prone to insomnia. It can actually, again, elevate those stress hormones that can make your immune system go down, so you're more likely to get sick, and can sustain, patterns of coping that isn't helpful, right? So maybe when we're feeling depressed and we're not really directly talking about what we're feeling or noticing what we're feeling, we might engage in something like stress eating or drinking, right? Smoking, doing kind of distracting ourselves a little bit from the stressors that are in front of us. And so, although it's counterintuitive, actually giving some air for those emotions to come out, and labeling and managing kind of the emotions as they're happening can help you express what you're feeling, allow yourself to have the feelings you're having, right? And actually decide how do you want to make decisions in a less hasty or pressured way. Um, and so a lot of times there's a kind of pressure when maybe I feel anxiety. I might say, okay, I'm going to fight that discomfort, right? So I'm going to strain and get as much information as I can. And of course, information gathering is helpful, but I don't know if any of you are feeling this way, but sometimes getting information in the middle of the night when maybe it's 3 a.m. and we're searching for answers on the internet, that can be pretty unproductive. And a lot of times we're trying to generate solutions when maybe there isn't a direct answer to the question we're trying to solve, right? So in a way, fighting the emotion, right, trying to soothe ourselves by fixing the problem might not actually work with something that isn't going to go away, right? There's no amount of me Googling treatments for diabetes that will make my type 1 diabetes go away. It's part of who I am, but there is this pull, and it's kind of a tug of war between wanting to feel in control and wanting to kind of sit with the discomfort of acknowledging there might not be one answer. And in many ways, fighting that, fight of trying to say, no, no, I'm not tired. I actually can keep going. I don't need help, or saying, ooh, I am getting a little bit lost in like how to manage my bookkeeping these days. But I actually don't want to deal with the emotions of sadness that comes with talking to my family members about this. So I'm actually going to, um, try to write down everything, do things all by myself. It's exhausting. And so fighting that discomfort a lot of times means generating more tension, more stress, right? We could also say, oh, I'm not feeling depressed about this. I'm on top of it, right? And in many ways, that's similar to the energy we put, in my little story towards putting a flashlight on the thing that feels threatening, right? So the more we focus on that threat, the less we're actually enjoying our quality time or resting, allowing ourselves to reboot after, a day that we've spent, working really hard already trying to solve that problem. And so the alternative to trying not to have the feeling, right, to not feeling uncomfortable, is to, try to label what is actually coming in. And so when we don't just feel the emotion under the radar and instead like bring it out into a conscious awareness and label it, that puts a distance between ourselves and our feeling. And it actually gives us a little bit of room, a little bit of time to decide, I am feeling anger right now. And how do I want to respond? Like what's the way that I want to deal with this challenge that's bringing up this anger right now? And Dan Siegel, who's an expert mindfulness practitioner and has written several books on the topic, says, when you name it, you tame it, right? So if I'm feeling disgusted at how someone, a provider maybe, interaction that was really invalidating, I might label that, like I'm feeling a lot of disgust right now about how I was treated. And now how do I want to, move forward? What do I want to do that's aligned with my values? That gives us that little bit of room, and it makes a lot of difference. Um, so we want to be attentive to the emotion we're feeling in the moment. Try not to judge ourselves for having the emotion, right? So maybe I observe, right, what is coming up and how is it unfolding over time. And it's not always relaxing to do this, right? If we're absolutely bitterly angry at that individual that slighted you, right? You might not feel calmer by labeling that you're angry, but the moment that you do it, then you know what you're working with and what the source maybe of that anger is. Like, what about that situation is making you feel angry, right? So you can kind of be curious and approach it with curiosity, getting to know yourself better. So let's make this real. So I've been kind of theorizing here, but many of you might be having thoughts, right? Like, when are things going to go back to normal, like before this diagnosis even appeared, right? And if we kind of think about what is the emotion underneath that statement, if we like distill it down, there's a lot of maybe sadness or grief, right? Like actually feeling sorrow about this being now a part of my life when it's not really something I wanted to sign up for. And allowing yourself to feel that sadness. Like, of course, it's not something that we want. And allowing yourself to have that emotion, have that response is very important. So people may think, like getting over grief involves moving on, and actually getting over grief is not something that happens. We get used to grief being part of the picture, right? And um, we long for the way things are, and noticing that change, acknowledging that it isn't the same, um, right? Labeling that. Or we might not be sleeping. Oops. We might not be sleeping, right? So maybe I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm searching for all those resources, like how are we going to deal with the symptoms that are going to come? They're going to be terrible. So we might find ourselves assuming the worst and catastrophizing, right? In the middle of the night. And labeling that when it comes up, right? Like, I'm having a moment of anxiety, or right now I'm feeling really edgy about this diagnosis. Usually these things are on a pendulum. Like, in one moment, I might feel really anxious about things, and maybe tomorrow I will feel very different about it, right? And that is normal. That's part of processing, right? Change is having mixed emotions about something. And so allow that apprehension, edginess to exist, and label it. Maybe when our doctors aren't being helpful, or maybe providing the solutions that we wish we had, or even being invalidating, which can happen sometimes, labeling that anger when it comes up, right? Or even that disgust, like, if that thought comes in, like, this shouldn't be happening, right? This shouldn't be the response or the way that I'm treated. Feeling contempt or a repulsion towards that reaction, something we can label and then figure out, what do we want to do, right? Even if it's switching providers, like that's always an option, but not something we want to do in a moment of, quick decision making in a place of anger. Maybe we, label the anger, let the anger maybe calm a bit, and then decide, like, how do I want to act given what happened? Right? And having conversations with providers, therapists, anyone who it feels like the relationship is strained. Um, a lot of times that gives that provider the chance to step up, right? To change their behavior, change their approach, so it feels more supportive. And as you're navigating this journey, it's so important to feel like your entire team is embracing you, is supportive. And I'm a doctor. We need feedback, right? So sometimes our approach might not land, but giving them a chance to change, right? And seeing how that goes. That's very different than maybe the reaction you might have in the heat of the moment without labeling the anger. So labeling is very helpful. Again, we can't go through all of the emotions today, but I want to share a couple of them that, some of you may be feeling on this call, and then how we can actually do some kind of management of those emotions when they do come up. So guilt is the first one I want to talk about. So, guilt obviously is feeling self-blame, or that it's your fault that something undesirable is happening, right? So the words that Attorney Collins said during her talk really stuck with me, this idea of, like, I should have taken her to the doctor immediately, right? I should have gone to the doctor earlier. I should have, gotten the assessment sooner. A lot of this can happen, right? Or I should know more than I do, or I'm not informed, I'm ignorant, right? So a lot of these feelings of guilt can come up. And one of the most helpful ways that we can cope with that is to engage in some self-compassion. So reminding yourself that this is an adjustment. No one has the solution, and that a lot of it is trial and error. It's trying something, seeing how it works, and then seeing if it works for you and for your family. And if it doesn't, changing it up, right? And the idea that, someone gets on on a tricycle, and then, a child learning how to ride a bike is going to get on the bike and ride it without falling a few times, right? It's just not how it works. And it's even harder when you're riding a bike on terrain that you don't know, right? Which is what we're doing with chronic illness. So remind yourself, you're doing the best that you can. You're in a difficult situation and you're doing what you can, right? And that there's no such thing as doing this perfectly. So kind of relinquishing that idea that we can control what's happening. And so if you all are willing to engage in a very quick, maybe not fully 5 minutes, but a brief sample of like what a self-compassion break might feel like, I can guide us through an exercise. So I want you all to think of a situation in your life right now that feels really difficult, and that is causing you stress. And as you call that situation to mind, I want to see if you can actually feel where the stress is housed in your body. Notice if there's a part of the body that really you're feeling it, right? Checking in and seeing where that lies. And I want you to say to yourself, as you maybe place a gentle hand of reassurance on that body part, maybe it's the chest, maybe it's the stomach, maybe it's, giving yourself a hug, whatever feels comforting, and tell yourself, this is a moment of genuine suffering. And suffering is a part of life. It's our common humanity. We all in this entire webinar are feeling some form of suffering together. We are not alone. And we all struggle in this adjustment process. And as you put your hands over that body part where you're feeling the stress, feel the warmth of your hands and the gentle touch of your hands on your chest, and adopt the soothing touch that feels right to you. The kind of soothing touch that you would give to a child if they had fallen and were in tears. And tell yourself, may I be kind to myself? Ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? Is there a phrase that in your particular situation might give you strength? And allow yourself to say that to yourself right now. And if nothing's coming up, I can give you a few statements, and you can latch onto any of these if they feel relevant. May I give myself the compassion I need? May I learn to accept myself the way I am? May I forgive myself? May I stay strong? May I be patient? And that's it. That's the exercise. So you've all done it. And this is something you can carry with you. You can do it in any moment when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling to blame for something, when you're feeling frustrated with the situation. So I wanted to share that with you all. It sounds hokey and corny, but it works. And if it works, we keep it, right? And if it doesn't work, be flexible. Again, there's no right way to cope either. Okay, so the next feeling I want to talk about is resentment. Is anyone in this room, you can't really, I don't know if you can raise your hands, but is anyone really mad at a loved one right now? It could be yourself, it could be a partner, it could be a family member that's not stepping up to help you out when you're having a hard time. It could be a doctor that's being really annoying, not giving you the prior authorization you need to get what you need. Channel that feeling, right? Whoops. So when we're put in a painful situation that's not of our choosing, and then someone's not making it easier, it's not uncommon to feel resentful towards that person or towards the situation. And we may actually compare ourselves to other people that aren't in this situation and then be like envious of what they're going through and what we're going through, right? Making those comparisons. And that resentment, right? One of the best things you can do with that is talk to other people on this call about it, right? If we share common feelings with others who are in a similar situation, you'll find that that resentment is not only something you're facing, but also something most of us are feeling at some point and towards someone, right? And so you're not having that feeling alone. You're having a natural human response to change, shock, or bad behavior, frankly, right? The system is broken, and like there are a lot of things that are frustrating. If I could tell you what the hold music on the phone for refilling my diabetes supplies makes me feel, I honestly, ugh. But being part of a diabetes support group where I could talk to people about how much we hate that hold music, or being hung up on after waiting for 30 minutes, right, to talk to your doctor to make an appointment, that helps you carry forward, right? It doesn't make it go away. I still have to wait on hold, but it allows me to make that emotion have space, right, to be able to exist. So when you're completely in terrible, like you're feeling terrible resentment and you don't know what to do, like I hate my provider, what do you do with that? So I want to kind of go through a quick exercise and see how this lands for you all. So I want you to think of a person that you're very mad at right now. Could be feeling upset or resentful of, could be a spouse, a family member, caregiver, provider, yourself. It could be, anyone that comes to mind, and see where that resentment is sitting in your body. Begin by being aware that this person is sitting in front of you in your mind's eye, and kind of imagine that they're a fellow human being just like you. Silently repeat these following phrases while you are looking at this person. Um, this person has a body and a mind just like me. This person has feelings, thoughts, and emotions just like me. This person has, during his or her life, experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering just like I have, just like me. This person has at some point been sad. This person has been disappointed in life just like me. This person has sometimes been angry just like me. This person has been hurt by others just like me. This person has felt unworthy or inadequate at times just like me. This person worries just like I do. This person is frightened sometimes just like me. This person will die one day just like I do. I will. This person has longed for friendship just like I do. This person is learning about life just like me. This person wants to be caring and kind to others just like I do. This person wants to be content with what life has given them just like me. This person wishes to be free from pain and suffering just like me. This person wishes to be happy just like me and wishes to be safe, strong, and healthy just like me. This person wishes to be loved just like me. And now allow your wishes for well-being for both of you to arise. I wish that you have the strength, resources, and social support to navigate difficulties in your life with ease. Tell them this, right? I wish that you have the strength, resources that you need to be free from pain and suffering, and that you'll be peaceful and happy because you're a fellow human being just like me. And whether your partner's right there with you in this room right now, or you've brought your partner, or not necessarily partner, but the person that you've brought into mind, into your heart, thank that person for doing the practice with you, right? Give thanks in whatever way it feels appropriate. So this is my little meditation that I like to do when resentment comes in. I've also given a little link to a recording of it that you can access for free online if that's helpful. I know that I'm running slightly out of time, but real quick, I just want to give you guys one more exercise so you guys know what anxiety is. We've all felt it. And part of what maintains our anxiety is when we're breathing in a really shallow way. It's part of our typical stress response. It's a sign that stress hormones are surging through the body. So a way that we can calm our breathing is by engaging in mindful breathing, right? Trying to make breathing space. So by slowing our breathing or breathing naturally, we kind of get out of the practice of shallow breathing. So I'm going to take a 1-minute shallow breathing cure here by doing this with you. So I want you all to either close your eyes or focus on a spot in front of you. and take a deep breath to bring yourself into the present moment. Just noticing whatever you're experiencing right now. Notice any sensations, whether they're discomfort or tension, as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Notice whatever is coming up in your mind, and if it's kind of trying to distract you, set it aside and bring your attention back to your breathing. Notice the cool air flowing through your nose as you inhale and the warm air as you exhale, as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And if you find your mind again wandering away from the breath, gently, without pressure or judgment, bring it back, bring your attention back to noticing each breath in and out as they follow, one after the other. And allow your awareness to expand to encompass your breath moving in and out of other areas in your body than the lungs. You might feel it in your stomach. You might feel it in your arms or your sitting bones, wherever you're feeling that breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And broaden that awareness even further to notice the entire room, the air in the room as it touches your body when you're breathing, the feeling of the chair underneath you as you're breathing in and as you're breathing out. And if your eyes are closed, go ahead and open them and take one last breath in and out. And bring your attention back to the room. Notice what you see. Notice what you can hear. Push your feet into the ground. Stretch. We've been sitting for a while. Give a big stretch one way, stretch the other way, and then shake it out. Notice how you feel now. How has your feeling of tension or anxiety in the body changed in that less than 2 minutes practice of breathing? Right, so we can really do a lot by training our attention. And know that cognitive changes are emotionally challenging, right? And we talked today about several tools you can use to keep your balance, including identifying what you're feeling, labeling it, joining a support group. And Alzheimer's LA has amazing support groups that they run. I also run a support group for caregivers that I'll share the resources with you at the end of this talk. There's you can take a self-compassion break anytime you need it. And if you're feeling really pissed at someone because they've done you wrong in some sort of way, and this is something that caregivers feel towards their loved ones and loved ones feel towards their caregivers, it is the nature of relationship, right? So powering through is hard without acknowledging that there's a feeling in there, right? So doing that just like me meditation reminds us that when we fight with someone or when we're feeling tension with someone, we're still humans, right? And we can still connect. We can calm, take the space we need for that anger to dissipate, and then talk from a place of honesty and transparency about changes we might need to make as a family. Or as a healthcare team so that things feel supportive. And then finally, very quickly, practice mindful breathing. So breathing into the moment, noticing where in your body you're feeling your breath. You always have your breath with you, right? We might not have a computer with us at all times so that we can listen to a recording, but if all else fails, that's a coping strategy that you can't help but have your lungs on board at all times, right? So you can kind of feel into that breath. If all of the above is still not feeling like it's enough and you're feeling overwhelmed, right? You're not alone. It takes a village, and there's no shame in seeking support from a therapist. Therapy, I think, has gotten a really bad rap as something that is for crazy people, in quotes. I think that everyone can benefit from having a coach that helps you figure out what's working and what's not working as you're navigating chronic illness. Whether you're the patient or whether you're the family member, it can be so helpful to have individual therapy, right? Talk to someone one-on-one about your particular challenges, or participating in a support group with other people that have the same diagnosis or are all kind of navigating caring for a loved one in the same way that you are. And okay, I know what you're thinking, but that's expensive, right? So what if I need more support and I can't manage alone? So I am a clinical supervisor, like I mentioned, at USC, and I work with PhD level trainees who are learning to specialize in providing care to, we call it older adults, but people as they age. And honestly, it's from birth to the end of the life, right? And so we provide free therapy for any individuals, either who are 55 and over or who are managing dementia or memory loss in any ways with their families. So even if you are a 12-year-old caregiver for a loved one with dementia, you can absolutely be seen at our clinic, right? So we are located physically at USC's main campus. And so if you prefer like an in-person counselor, we can do that. We also offer Zoom therapy. So if this is easier, especially, when it's hard to navigate schedules and coordinate transportation, we can offer free services on Zoom as well. And we offer both individual and group support. Um, and so I already said these things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for challenges that you have related to chronic illness. We also offer, therapy for things like depression, anxiety, trouble sleeping. But we have the specialty where, many of our trainees are working with caregivers or with individuals who are diagnosed with chronic illnesses. And we provide evidence-based treatments, right? So tools from cognitive behavioral therapy, from acceptance and commitment therapy. I gave you a little bit of a sampling of both today. And figuring out how can I still lead a valued life and still enjoy my campfire moments, even when the raccoons are coming at my cooler. Um, so for those of you who are caregivers, we are going to be kicking off a caregiver support group this fall. And we're currently recruiting both individuals who are interested in individual therapy on Zoom as well as, or in person, as well as for this Zoom-based caregiver support group that we'll be having. I personally will be leading the caregiver support group with my students. So you'll have several clinicians in the room, in the Zoom room, as it were. So if you're interested, we're going to have a sign-up sheet today. Feel free to fill that out. Again, services are free. And any work done by a clinical psychology trainee is supervised by me. So you kind of got a taste of what my work is like. But it's been really a joy getting to know you guys. I wish I could hear from each and every one of you. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have about what we talked about today.
Thank you so much, Bruna. I found that helpful. Even, hosting a conference, like, oh yes, let's take a moment and get back into our body. So I really appreciated that. And we have two questions that I wanted to ask is the therapy available in Spanish?
So I will be transparent that it depends on the trainees that are available and the supervisors. So we have several licensed clinical psychologists who speak Spanish in the clinic. So it depends on the students that are taking on cases each year. So if that's something you're interested in, you can definitely be screened by our front desk and just let them know the preference of language. And we can kind of let you guys know. And if there isn't a student that can take that case on, we can also refer to other providers in the community that do speak Spanish. So absolutely.
Okay. And then we have another question that I'll get your thoughts on, but it may be more appropriate for when Dr. Trin comes, or I'll also be sharing some resources. But someone asked, for those of us with memory and cognitive issues with no family nearby and no friends who see us every day, is there a self-test we can access to be able to see if our memory is declining and we need help?
Absolutely. So I actually want to put in another plug for our services. So we actually have in addition to the therapy resources, we also do assessments in the clinic. So if you're interested in being evaluated, it's extremely reduced fee and it's a sliding scale. So I think if you have financial need, you could talk to the clinic about it and they might even be able to accommodate that. I was last told it's, I think $250 is the standard fee for a full neuropsych assessment. So if you or any of your loved ones are interested in getting a formal report and doing cognitive testing to find out a diagnosis, that's something that we can offer in the clinic. And usually, that'll involve doing paper and pencil tests, as well as doing some, test with a in person with a psychology trainee where you're doing some puzzles and things like that. And then you actually do get a formal set of recommendations, what they would recommend. And again, I didn't mention that other hat that I have, but I also did do neuropsych assessment as part of my VA kind of, training, and I supervise cases there as well. So if you're interested, just let us know. I don't think that my form formally says that, but you can maybe just say that you're interested, and when we contact you to screen, you could just say like, in addition to therapy, I'm interested in assessment, and we can connect you with that.
Okay, thank you. And also, Gail, I'll be providing a resource that may be helpful later in the presentation. So hopefully we'll get that question answered in multiple ways. And then we also have a question. Someone said, I think I missed it, but is the therapy through insurance?
No, so there's no insurance. We do not process insurance. So part of our clinic policy is to try to fill needs in the community where we are housed. So we serve people throughout all of California, even. You don't have to be in LA. You do have to be in California. That's the one limitation. But there's no insurance processed, no Medicare, none of that. So it's just free. So you don't have to deal with paperwork. I feel like caregivers have enough paperwork to deal with already. So this like eliminates one more barrier. The one thing that I will say is we like to screen everyone that comes in interested in services just to make sure that the concerns that you have are best addressed by our clinic. We don't offer crisis services. So if you're looking for substance abuse treatment or a more intensive crisis care, that's something that we don't offer in our clinic. We do outpatient weekly visits. So that's something that we could talk to you about seeking services outside our clinic. So we do like to screen folks just to make sure the fit is good for you. We want to kind of provide you with the best care that you can get. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a couple more minutes. If anybody wants to take advantage of Bruna being here, you can put a message in the chats and the Q&A box. Uh, Want to make sure get all your questions answered live. All right. Well, I don't see. Oh, let's see. Does your clinic provide EMDR therapy?
No, so we don't have a specialty in EMDR, but if you're seeking therapy services for trauma, that is something that we do offer. And like I said, I did a lot of years of work at the VA in Boston, and there I, worked with a lot of seniors who had trauma throughout the lifespan, really, from midlife through the end of life. And so a lot of the students are trained in trauma therapy. So that's something that we can provide, and it's evidence-based and gentle. And so that's something that definitely, if you're interested in doing exposure or working on kind of complex trauma, that's something that we can do. But that specific type of training requires special, it's a special training that we don't have the expertise in the clinic in, so we don't provide that specific form of trauma therapy.
All
But again, we
right.
can recommend other people that do. So that's again why we screen.
Okay. And then someone asked if you happen to know any special services for USC retired professors?
I don't know any specific to that group services that are like uniquely different from what we offer to everyone, but retired professors at USC are welcome to join our services that we have. Obviously, when someone comes in ethics is really important to us. So if, the individual has any conflict of interest or is supervising any students or anything like that, we wouldn't assign a case that way. But we have had lots of staff members, you know, faculty members interested in therapy, and that's not an issue at all. So you are welcome to be screened. They're very mindful about that.
And it's a name of the clinic again, please.
Yes, that's the Psychological Services Center at USC. And I believe we have a sign-up sheet also that we'll be sharing with you all on this call. So if, I think thank you, Carmine. So Carmine just shared in the chat, there's a form that you can click and it should go to a Google link, and you can let us know if you're interested in us reaching out, both about the caregiver support group that we'll be running as well as individual therapy. And if Zoom is not your preferred format, like you can let us know when we screen, so that we can make sure we're seeing you in your preferred method. And again, like we can do we have a beautiful clinic on the penthouse suite of the psychology building at USC's main campus. We can comp for parking, so we give free parking. The services are free also, and if coming in person is something that actually gives you a little bit of respite, and is helpful to structure your day or your week, that's something you can also do.
All right.
Oops. Yeah, I think in the chat, the link is not clickable. Oops. Are folks able to access the form okay?
Let's see. We might have to change some of the settings for the form. It could be it's not public. So we'll get that fixed. And also just remind everyone after the conference, we're going to be sending you over all the contact information from our speakers and all the helpful handouts. So we'll make sure, because we're going to be sending the link, we'll make sure that we get that link set to public so you can fill it out and get connected to Dr. Bruna and her team. And I also want to point out, Dr. Bruna is a frequent speaker at our memory club. We love to have her. We always learn something new. And I'll be going over some of the specific early stage support groups that we offer. And again, one being Memory Club, that is also a group that provides guest speakers and specialists in their area of focus, from elder law attorneys, clinical psychologists, and neurologists, and geriatricians. So we want to make sure that you know that we do provide other services to hear and get a chance to have a little bit longer and more one-on-one time with Bruna. So yeah, we'll be talking more about all those different services. And thank you. Or let me see. Yes, so thank you, Bruna. Thank you for
Thank
being
you
here
guys so
today.
much. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to get to know you. And again, I wish we could unmute all the mics and I could hear from all 106 of you. I guess 105 I count too, huh? But it's been a pleasure, and don't be strangers. Let us know how we can help. And hopefully this will be the first time you've met me, but we'll continue working together in the future. And for sure, we'll get the link working so you guys can sign up, and we'll be in touch this summer for all who are interested in working together with us at USC. So
Thank
thank you so
you.
much, and have a lovely rest of the conference.
Thank you, Bruna.
All right. Take
And
care.
because we work in real time, I did get a message from our IT, and they said the link is public, but you may have issues with your browser blocker if you're on your mobile or Apple device. So we can try and help support and make sure that you have access to the form, but it may be something to do with your browser as well. It could be blocking the form. So again, we'll make sure that you'll access it after the conference. Alrighty.
Enjoy the conference all, and so nice to meet you again. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Matt. And now I'm going to, as I shared, I'm going to introduce our next section. And our next session is one of the most powerful ways to learn about living with memory loss is to hear directly from those walking the journey every single day. And so our next session is called Insights and Inspirations. It features a panel of current participants in our groups, and it is someone living with memory loss, a care partner, and someone continuing to live independently while navigating memory changes. They have all graciously agreed to share their experiences, challenges, lessons learned, and sources of hope. Please join me in welcoming our panelists as they offer their unique perspectives and inspire us with their resilience, courage, and wisdom. All right, everybody. Thank you all for being here. As I said, I'm a little biased. This is my favorite part of the conference because you get a peek into the honor and privilege that I have each day to work with these wonderful participants, and they're going to come and share a little bit. So I'm going to do this very much like what would kind of feel like one of our support groups. All of our support groups are online via Zoom. And so this is what it looks like. We do this every week. We meet sometimes every other week, and we gather and we share and do life together. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves. That would be question one from the list of questions that I handed out. If everybody, I will call on your name. If you could just share your name, age, profession, and also what your official diagnosis is. So I'm going to start off with Carolyn.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Carolyn Habersham. I'm 74 years young. I am a retired minister and I am diagnosed with frontal temporal lobe dementia.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Carolyn, what groups do you currently participate in or have?
Uh, Connections and Memory Club.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to point out something why I asked Carolyn to come speak today is she actually spoke 2 years ago at our early memory loss conference, right after she was recently diagnosed. So again, 2 years since she's been diagnosed, and she continues to grow and learn. And I thought she has so much that has happened that I think would be valuable for you all to hear how she continues to participate and and play such an active role in her journey. So it's going to be really unique to hear, everything that's happened in 2 years. So thank you, Carolyn, for coming again. And now I'm going to ask Elsa to come on and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Elsa. I'm 72 years old. I am a retired registered nurse. I retired last year, and my diagnosis is MCI.
All right. And Elsa, there's someone sitting next to you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Teresa, and I'm Elsa's friend and supporter. We've known each other, oh my gosh, for over 50 years. I'm 72 years old. We're both 72 years old. I'm
Thank,
also a retired nurse.
thank you. And it's so nice to see when friends show up and are part of our support circle. So thank you for being here, Teresa, and sharing your time with us. And now I'd like to introduce Donna, and Bill. Would you like to share a little bit about yourselves?
Well, background wise, I'm a former TV broadcaster working for CBS News. It's almost embarrassing to say that these days. I also, when I retired, my husband and I got into doing commercials. So we spent a lot of years doing a lot of commercials, which was fun. Um, I am the caregiver. I have not been diagnosed with anything, but I'm my husband's caregiver.
Thank you. And Bill, can you please introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Bill Bryce, 83 years old and or young, like
Me too.
one of you ladies said. And uh, I worked in the computer field for years and years and years. And then when that job was retired from, and I don't even know, like around 68 or so, I started doing commercials along with my wife. We were both that was I think we were both fresh on
That was about 2004 when we were both retired. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, I get things mixed up a little bit.
You're perfectly
It was
fine.
it was a great 8 or 9 years of that until COVID took it down. And that's it. Just that's a little background.
Thank you. Thank you both. And everyone has a very unique story in their road to diagnosis. So I'd like to ask everyone if they can share a little bit about that. Again, I'll start off with Carolyn. What was your road to diagnosis and how did that look? Did you have any difficulty getting a diagnosis?
Yes. I was diagnosed November 2023 after a surgery that went 5 hours longer than expected. I came out of that surgery with a lot of brain fog. I got concerned. I didn't share with anyone immediately. I just kept paying attention. And then I also experienced losing things. And I don't know that I was losing things as much as I was throwing things away. And which I later realized that's what was happening. I was finding things in places I never would have put them. And that's when I realized that that's why people accuse people of stealing from them, because things seem to disappear. And I realized I lived alone, so they were disappearing from me by me. So I couldn't blame that on anyone else. My road to diagnosis was very disturbing. I was dismissed by three neurologists. I was not taken seriously um, until I had some extensive testing done at UCLA Neuroscience Building. I was able to get into there and get tested, and it was only then was I taken seriously. I was sharing with the doctor. I went to three neurologists, and they all dismissed me. And the last one, I was so glad to have my diagnosis in my hand. I went to the neurologist. I was excited. I could tell them that I'm not crazy. And before he could ask me how I was feeling or about my diagnosis or testing, he then told me that they had decided that I needed psychological counseling because there was really nothing wrong with me.
Oh.
And then I told him, I said, so that means that the test I got from UCLA is invalid then. And then he was like, oh my, what test from UCLA? You didn't tell us you went to UCLA, all of that. And I showed him the testing and got the diagnosis. And I kept that neurologist for one reason. Number one, he apologized profusely. And then we partnered together to work with my healing together. But it was only after getting the cognitive study.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And something I'd like to add, being a witness to that journey, is how gracefully you handle it. It was very frustrating, and you would come with your frustrations in group, but just how just gracefully you handled it, just how you still worked with that doctor and, you used your empowerment. I love that about you, that, you never gave up and you continued to go back and go back and go back. And I always love hearing that story. Like, oh, what if I'm wrong, then UCLA is too, right? So it's nice to have the support of some big names. So
Yes.
thank you. And Donna and Bill, can you share about your journey to diagnosis and what that looked like?
Well, it started with a stiff arm. We live literally almost across the street from Cedars Hospital. And rather than, we live in a very complex condo community, very big. And it would take an hour for an ambulance or medics to find our place. So I just put him in the car and drove over to the hospital. And he had a mini stroke. His arm was stiff, but that was the extent of it. And they did a brain MRI and saw that he had had a number of mini strokes, none of which we ever knew about, and that there had been some damage to the brain. So it wasn't as difficult as us to get a diagnosis. We had a neurologist assigned to us, and it was not difficult for us to get a diagnosis for Bill. And you're the one that experienced it. You may want
It was no fun.
Yeah.
But I can understand why the lady who spoke earlier may have been misunderstood by her doctors, because she is so incredibly fluent. She is so incredibly bright. There's no way that I would ever think, it's like Bill, there's no way I would ever think that there was a mental situation there, a cognitive situation there. So maybe give him a little leeway that you just put it over them.
Yeah. Well, that is his area of expertise, but I think Bill, I think that was probably really still surprising too, and getting that diagnosis, if if you didn't have that accident and kind of intervened earlier, maybe those further testing wouldn't have happened so early on. But what a surprise and shock it must have been. How did you feel, going in for a stiff arm and coming out, with the diagnosis like this?
Frankly, I was in denial. uh, had this thing, and they told me what I had, and needed to get it, taken care of. Even they all thought it was Alzheimer's, and as it eventually turned out to be, it was a mild
Cognitive
disorder. But in the meantime, I was denying until I went to, we have UCLA as our primary, and they confirmed that I was not only having that problem, but I had a little bad heart too. So
Yeah, he has a couple of things going on. As
Yeah.
a caretaker, I'm juggling a lot of a lot of problems
it's
here.
funny. It was my own fault. I had an attitude. I was what they call a jock, an athlete, through high school and college, and I was scholarship in that. But I always, I always fought whenever I got hit or hurt or something like that. I just, took it and got rid of it somehow or some way, and thinking that I was in not being an invalid. So
Yeah. But that's quite common. It is quite common for a lot of people to feel denial, and it's a hard diagnosis to accept, especially the way finding out. So thank you, Bill. Thank you for sharing your insights. And Elsa, what did your journey look like to diagnosis?
Um, so I'm a retired registered nurse, so I was starting to lose my phone and my glasses, mainly that. And I would tell people that I would lose stuff, and they'd say, "Well, it's just age." And I thought, no, I don't accept that. There's got to be a reason. So I just I had three problems. I got a neurologist, but it took me like 3 months to see him. And uh, I had restless leg. I thought I had restless leg syndrome and neuropathy, and I also had problems with my memory. And I wanted him to take care of all three things. And he told me he could only do one thing at a time. But he did give me some cognitive tests, and he said I was okay. And I said, "No, I'm not." And so he treated me for the restless legs. That took a while. And then the neuropathy. And then each time he would give me a cognitive test, but it would take like maybe 3 months to see him, and sometimes that he wasn't available. He had an emergency and he couldn't uh, keep the appointment. So I had a lot of that problem. So that's why it kind of took a long time. And then eventually he was doing cognitive tests, and they were getting a little worse. So then he gave me memantine, and that seemed to help me. Um, and then eventually he said he thought maybe I had Alzheimer's disease, but he really didn't know for sure. So he referred me to Dr. Helena Chu at Keck Medical. And I started seeing her, and she did cognitive tests on me, and then she ordered the blood tests. And then uh, so I was diagnosed on March of 2025. And then she started treating me, and then she gave me a medication, and then I had problems with it. It was an oral medicine, and I had a reaction to it. And then later on, she gave me another medication, and I had a reaction to it. And so then finally she gave me the Kisunla infusions, and I did really well with that. And I'm still doing very well with it. And I'm getting, it seems like my mind is more clear, but before she had to start that, it took about a year or so, because I was on medications for fibromyalgia. I was on clonazepam, and she said that created brain fog. So it took a while to wean me off of that. And then I was on a bladder medicine, which I thought had no relationship at all. And she said that was causing brain fog. So that had to get changed. And then there were other medicines too. Like I was taking Lomatil for the diarrhea that I got, the first medicine she gave me, and then that causes brain fog. So it just seemed like one after another that all these medications caused brain fog, and I thought, oh, okay. So I slowly weaned off everything, and then she ended up giving me the Kisunla. So she had to deal with a lot of problems that I had before. So that's what happened. So
Can I ask a question?
Sorry, Donna. No, one second. We're not gonna have questions. We're during this time.
Oh, okay.
1 second. So Elsa, I want to highlight what you just shared is that your journey to diagnosis, you really got all the tests that are currently available, I see that more and more common. You had the blood tests done, then you moved on to the MRI and PET scan, and now even the infusions, getting the infusions, and that is just recently available for many people. Within the last year, it's just been FDA approved. So, I love your story of road to diagnosis, because, whether it was your background as a nurse and, continuing to advocate for yourself, but, you really have gone the whole gamut of what's available right now. It took a long time, but, really is a snapshot of kind of what's happening currently.
before I saw Dr. Chu, it was a fight. I kept insisting and insisting, and I wouldn't give up. And because the neurologist kept saying that I was okay. So, but I had to fight for it. Even though I have a background in nursing, I still had to fight for it
Yeah.
and give up. I just kept pushing and pushing, and I didn't give up. So,
Thank you. Yeah,
I was
and
very proactive.
mm-hmm.
This whole period, she's been very proactive and very courageous, I must say.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Elsa. Yeah. And yeah, even with the background, right? You still had to fight, you still had to demand answers. And that is very common for a lot of people to have to fight and to keep going back and to keep asking and advocating for self. And sometimes it can be hard, as you mentioned, when you're taking different medications that can cause brain fog. And similar to what Carolyn shared, maybe somebody saying, no, it's not, it's not dementia, it's not memory loss, it's this other thing, right? Without even really doing all the proper testing or going through diagnosis process. So
The
thank you, Elsa. Thank you for sharing that part. And Carolyn, another question I'd like to ask is, what was your initial response to the diagnosis? How did you feel? How has that journey maybe changed in the last 2 years since we last saw you?
My initial response was, I can tell you, I left my doctor's office pretty sure they were going to tell me dementia. I got across the street. I had to pull my car over to the side, stop it, turn it off, and cry.
Mm,
Because even though I was pretty sure that's what they were going to tell me, hearing it was even harder. But what I learned over this time is that acceptance is really your best friend. There's not a lot I can do about anything, but as long as I can accept that this is what it is, I may not like it, but this is what it is right now.
mm,
And so being able to move from that place, starting at that place, and then moving from that. And with the information that I got from Alzheimer's LA, it made the journey so much easier for me because the education, the groups, all of that made navigating this space a lot easier.
mm. Thank you, Carolyn. And Carolyn is always such a great advocate for others in the way she expresses and gives her insight. She's helped so many people within her group put words to what's going on. And so I thank her for that because she's taught, us as well as professionals of some of the insights of someone battling this. Um, and Donna and Bill, and I apologize, Donna, just because we are short on time, but that is usually our norm. We ask questions and
Yeah.
engage with others, but we just want to be able to give a snapshot of everyone of their journey. So, for you and Bill, what parts of your life have been impacted, would you say, since diagnosis, whether that be, hobbies, how you interact with others? How has that looked like?
Well, I think Bill, he's going to explain his hobbies, but he is going after them uh, much with vengeance these days. Let's put it that way. Mine is just that I've had to take on a lot of responsibility. Like I have to go to his doctor's appointments with him. And, he is a cardiologist, he has a neurologist, he has a urologist, and we've had a lot of, a dentist, and we've had a lot of appointments. And I have to accompany him because he won't remember what was said to him or what the instructions were for his treatment. So I go to make sure that he has all of that information. I have to keep track of all of his appointments and mine. I mean, we're both 83 years old. We do have our health issues. And so that all of the bookkeeping in that area, appointment setting, everything, in addition to paying the bills, and they're mostly on auto pay now, so I don't really have to worry that much about it. But I have to keep up, and we get our credit card statement. I check to make sure that there's nothing fraudulent on our cards, and it's just all my responsibility now. Bill doesn't have that responsibility at all anymore, although he has another area that he takes care of that maybe you'd like to share.
Well, the area I decided that, based on what was going on, I started working out extremely hard in the gym to build up muscles or whatever. We Donna had previously in our life, but she had put me on to a protein meal, and all of a sudden we enacted that even more so because we're like today we're doing protein shakes with all the words or
He
the
makes one every morning for our breakfast.
for each of us. So anyway, there's that. And as far as the gym is concerned, I go in there and I do like an hour and a half of vigorous exercises.
And what about your puzzles and
And I was getting to that. The puzzles I decided to go after. I go if you've heard of the game Sudoku.
Mhm.
I'm working on that. I work on word scramble, and I work in the Ken, or is that what they call it? But putting numbers together so they're a sequel one,
he
two, three,
does
four.
this a couple hours a day.
Yeah, and I'm actually doing pretty good on the Sudoku, and not the Sudoku, but the Ken and the other one I mentioned.
Mhm.
Sudoku, it's good. They have 4 levels, and I have the simplest one. I can do that one, but I have a tough time. But I still go after the other one.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I'm
He's
working
really
hard.
dedicated. And I can tell when he gets stressed out, all of a sudden his head is over a puzzle. And I think that's helping his stress level in addition to keeping his mind active. So,
Nice. And Don and Bill, you just really give an example of, the changing roles as couples and relationship has as this diagnosis, that it affects, the couple as the whole and different challenges that come. But then also, Bill, you beautifully demonstrated of what you still have control of, what you still can do. And you had mentioned to me the other day, like, wow, I guess the positive was it forced me to do more of the good things, like work out more, do the puzzles more, be proactive. So, you both really showcase that. So thank you of, the challenges and the changes, but also what you still can control and do.
and one thing about the finances is he may not take care of the bills and all of the appointments and everything like that, but he's become a savant in stocks. I mean, man is going crazy, and he's making us a fortune. And we have Nvidia stock, a lot of it. And if you know anything about the stock market, it's soaring. And so he's helping us in that area.
Well, there's another benefit that you didn't require, and I may have to start asking Bill for tips because I know nothing about the stock market, but thank you. And
Yeah.
Elsa, did you tell your friends and family about the diagnosis, or where have you turned for support?
Well, Teresa was with me when I got my results. And so she's been really tremendous in supporting me, and she takes me to my her and her husband take me to Oscar, take me to my appointments, to all of them for all my brain scans and the MRIs and the PET scan she took me to, and everything though. And they pick me up and drop me off at home, and they're always with me. They feed me. We have fellowship. And but my greatest source of strength is my faith in Jesus Christ as the Son of the Father. Without him, I wouldn't be here. My faith is the core of me. And um, I also I told my son, and I told a few family members and a few friends, and everybody's been supportive of me. But Teresa and her husband Oscar have been the most supportive of me, and they're with me all the time. They're with me every step of the way. They're with me now, and they're going to be with me in the future, and that
Hmm.
means a lot.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Elsa. And it can be really scary. And I've heard so many people that don't want to tell family or friends, they're scared, or it can be really hard to let others in to accept support. And so, thank you for allowing yourself to be open. But I also would like to ask Teresa for maybe other family or friends out there that may be hesitant or maybe a little scared, not knowing what to say, what to do. Um, we were talking about this the other day. We all have different reaction. It's like grieving. Some people are in denial, some people get angry, but you know, if you could tell family and friends something or provide your insight of how, you are a support to Elsa, what would you share with them?
It can be very scary to be faced with a responsibility. Um, but we have been through so many other challenges because we've known each other for so long. We've been through weddings, to each other's weddings. We've been through divorces, and we've been through raising children. So we've been nursing school. Um, so we've been through a lot, but yes, it can be very scary to take on the responsibility. But the friendship, the love that we have for each other, I know she would be there for me. So I'm very happy to be there for her. And happily, my husband is also on board. So both of us, and I mean, I don't know. I hope that we're healthy enough. And I tell Elsa, we may die of something totally different because we're all going there. It's just a matter of when. But in the meantime, we're dealing with today, and today is a good day.
Mm, thank you. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you for sharing your insight. Yeah, and it's so important. It's so beautiful to see when people are able to open their support system and ask, and they always see this sense of relief because so many people say, "Well, I don't want to be a burden to anyone," and they always say, "I don't want to burden anyone. I don't want to burden." And then when I get the privilege of, you know, talking to whoever they're burdening, they always say, "No, I love them. We have a beautiful relationship, whether it's friendship, romantic, spouse, adult child." They say, "This is my turn to give that love right back." So
Yeah.
I encourage everyone. It can sound scary, but you know, finding more support, it's beautiful. It's really nice, and it's a gift for the others around you to have more opportunity to be with you and be present with you in this journey. Thank you.
It's an honor to be able to be given the opportunity to behave as a human being to another human being that you love, to be loved, to be Christ-like, if I can go that way.
Mhm,
This is an opportunity for me to step up.
mhm.
And she
Thank
has,
you.
and that's what it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Teresa. And Carolyn, I'd like to ask you, what changes have you made in your life since the diagnosis? Lifestyle, routines, finances?
Yeah, everything. Um, yeah, my life has been greatly impacted by the disease. I had to stop driving. I stopped driving the day I received my diagnosis. For me, I knew I could never live with myself if I hurt someone or even myself, and knew that I had no business driving. So I gave away my car that same week. I also can no longer cook. So one day I put something on the stove, walked out of the kitchen, had no recollection that I'd even been in the kitchen. Fortunately, I came back in as it was about to catch fire, scared me to death, and I never cooked, never turned on my stove from that day forward. I still use my microwave and air fryers because they turn themselves off by themselves. Um, and so I'm pretty much homebound. So my life has changed. Plus, I'm now experiencing sundowners, which is a syndrome that happens with some people who have dementia. For me, it makes me anxious. My chest gets tight, breathing gets labored, confusion. I start pacing back and forth. And let me say this, for me, thank God for medication. I said when they gave me anxiety medication, it kind of evened me out, and I can thank God for that. My cousin, my son, my next door neighbor all worked with me to monitor paying my bills because I was paying the same bill over and over and couldn't figure out why they were telling me I wasn't paying my bills. Um, and so they monitor that. They monitor my appointments. I have advanced directives, my medical authorizations, all of those conversations, those tough conversations that we needed to have. I have it with them, and I can share an experience that happened with me the other day. I take medical transportation. They got me across town to my appointment fine, but they lost me in the computer. They couldn't figure out how to get to me where I was. I didn't know really where I was, but my neighbor always knows where I am. I give her my addresses to every medical appointment I'm going to. I was able to call her. She was able to calm me down and say, I know where you are. I'm coming to get you. So it's one of those things. So the more people I include a lot of people into my community, because even my neighbors on the street, when I go walking, they're checking, are you supposed to be out? Hi, are you supposed to be at home? They know. And so my life has changed because I've learned that you can't do this by yourself. So I share everything with family and friends. And now I have a greater opportunity of people who are helping me get from point A to point B.
Thank you, Carolyn. And something that I think Carolyn is very humble about that I love is Carolyn's written a book recently, So how she continues to change since diagnosis is she still continues to grow and live. And as she shares her challenges, she's always real and comes with, all of these situations, but she always moves forward and grow. And I'd like everyone to just see that of you can still grow and you can still live after diagnosis. And that's why we do what we do to encourage people to get an early diagnosis so that they can continue to live, continue to, as Caprice Collins said earlier, have a say in their future as much as they can, to be a part of the journey actively. And we'll be there through all the ups and downs, through the crying and the tears and the anger. It's all welcomed. And so, yeah, I really love to highlight that, Carolyn is a beautiful image of how you can still grow and give back to the world through her beautiful book that she recently wrote.
Can I share one thing,
Mm-hmm.
Cassandra? One thing that I didn't share in this journey going through Sundowners, somebody has to be in my house every evening, and I live alone. So my grandchildren are now my caregivers. They figure it out who's going to come home late, who's going to come home early, and somebody stays here all through the night. But it's my grandchildren. My grandchildren are 11, 14, and 21. And they are taking a real, they're just excited that they get to help me with this part of it. So they actually live they have moved into my house. That means my house will never be clean again. But they're in my house and they're actually helping me because somebody has to be here in the evenings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carolyn. And Donna and Bill, I wanted to ask you, what helps you cope with these new changes in your life? And in particularly, I actually really want Bill to share the story that he shared with me yesterday, Bill, about, Donna and Bill are very active with their friends and they enjoy to be social. But Bill shared a really cool story with me about how he kind of navigates those conversations. So, Bill, I wanted to see if you remember that story, if you could share it right now.
I can't remember.
This is how
Uh,
you look for the openings in conversations.
Well, we have a coffee group that we go to the gym when we're going to the gym 4 days a week. And after our workout, you go in there and there's like 5 or 6 people. And what I finally have done is I've moved my chair to the end where I can see a television set.
You have the news on.
The news is on, and they have the scrolls, so I can see my stocks that that I've got.
Media.
There's always a little selfish thing in it for me. Anyway, and then what's going on? And I used to be a little more talkative, but I'm not anymore. And so, because I don't know what to say, and I don't want to embarrass myself too much, or Donna. Uh, so I keep quiet. I'm looking at that, and I'm one of these guys that shake their head, but I don't participate until I find out something that may be going across the screen. I just look at this, and as an example, if it's bad news for Trump,
No, let's
I'm
not
Trump.
get political.
I'm not a Trumper.
Let's not get political.
So I said, look at that, look at that.
Yeah, maybe the Dow, like you said, it's you're into
Yeah.
stocks, saying,
Because
oh, the Dow's up, the Dow's down. That making sure you're staying current on those events and relevant information.
that's true. And the reason I pick on those little topics so I can, do something that's current events. These people know I've always been a joker of, one way or another. And but it's hard to joke when you don't know what's going on. And so I look at those opportunities, and then I boom, 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 throw my little sense of humor to them.
In my case, you asked me this question, what keeps you? Bill and I have been together since high school and married a long time. We're both 83. And to me, it's my love for him. He was always my big, handsome football hero. He always will be. I have a great respect for him. And I'm proud, as the other lady, Teresa said, I'm proud to be his caretaker. He's done so much for me over the years and been so wonderful, as you have been, Teresa, with your friend. And yeah, I want to this. I feel in a way like I'm giving back to him, but I haven't lost any respect. I just adore him, and I think he's wonderful. The other thing is that we live in a community of 600 on the water and we live in Marina Del Rey, so we're on the water. So we have that pleasantry around us all the time. But also, of the 600 condominiums that are here, I would say half are people 70 and older.
Right.
And as a result, we have a lot of friends. We have a lot of things in common. And we do a lot of socializing. And I think the socializing part of it is very important. And Carolyn has her grandchildren. I mean, how much more social can you get than your grandchildren? So, and you have your friends, Teresa. So I think that's so important, the socializing.
Yes. Thank you, Donna. Thank you. And I know when you shared it the other day, I love kind of like the hashtag you gave, and you said we cope with love. And I think you all shared a little example of that. Like, how do you get through this? Through love. And so thank you for saying that. We're running out of time. I'm gonna push this. It's always my favorite. I could stay here forever. I'm just gonna push a little 2 minutes out because I want to ask Elsa a final question, and then I'll get maybe some final thoughts from everybody. Is Elsa, if you could give any advice to professionals working with people impacted by early memory loss, what may be some insights do you think you'd like to share?
I think in the perfect world, uh, patients are usually in contact with their general practitioner the most. Uh, so I would say do cognitive tests in the office. But one caution is that a lot of times people pass a cognitive test and they still have Alzheimer's. So continue to find out why they have memory loss. Do all the tests. And in the perfect world, I wish that they could order the blood test for Alzheimer's and then and if it's positive, then refer them to a neurologist. I just think that if it started with a GP, then people would get diagnosed faster and get the blood tests faster and get treated faster, because time is brain. Each moment that you don't do something about it, your brain cells are dying and you could never get it back. Don't stick your head in the sand. Just deal with it. Adjust constantly and deal with it and get your needs met.
Thank you. Thank you, Elsa. Thank you for that. And thank you all again for coming here and sharing a part of your journey. I'm so grateful to have you all here. And for everyone at the conference, I just want to point out this is kind of what group feels like. Again, like I said, we could be here sometimes all day. I have to be like, okay, we've got to finish for the day, but this is what I say is when we do life together. We provide feedback, we share in the day to day. And Elsa has mentioned a few times about the blood test, and I saw some people asking, what is that? I think Dr. Trin may bring that up during his presentation as he answers questions, and we can get some more insight on that and what that looks like. But yeah, thank you all for being here. And any other just final thoughts or anything anybody wants to say real quick before we go?
I would say be proactive in your health care. And also nourish yourself spiritually. And I want to thank you, Cassandra, because Cassandra's been a big inspiration for me. And she heads groups and she gives me so much love, and she gives herself. And also to my my neuropsychological doctor. She's my therapist. She has Gail Murdoch. She has a master's degree in theology, and that helps me so much because I'm faith-based. So she gives me so much insight, and she's such a good doctor. She's so wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Elsa. Carolyn, it looked like you were going to say something.
Just one of the things that I had to learn, and I hope I keep it, is learning to laugh, learning to turn to comedy and laugh, because this disease gives us a lot to think about, but at least if you can laugh. And I've learned to laugh at a lot of things.
Thank you. Bill and Donna, last word.
Last words is keep fighting, keep going after your health, and always love your spouse.
Or significant other, whatever that may be.
Beautiful.
Even
Thank
if
you
it's
all.
your dog or your cat.
Dog, cats, anybody. Again, love.
Love.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you in group until the next time.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. As we move through our conference, before we call out Dr. Trin right now, I'd actually like to take a pause for some announcements. If we can pull up that document. Something that I kind of heard a lot of people speaking about is, someone had mentioned, what if I don't have anybody to help me to get a diagnosis, or if I need to understand what's going on, to have more of an accurate point of view. And something that I'm really excited and today I get to introduce is the Memory Loss Roadmap. It's a resource created through a partnership between Alzheimer's Los Angeles and the American Memory Loss Foundation to help individuals and families navigate memory concerns with greater confidence. The inspiration behind the roadmap comes from Ed Chambliss, president of the American Memory Loss Foundation. He recognized that many people experiencing memory changes don't know where to begin or how to advocate for themselves. He's a caregiver himself and has helped three other family members get diagnosis, so he knows firsthand the challenges, even the challenges that you've heard from some of our participants here. So his goal has been to create a practical, easy to use tool that individuals take action sooner and feel more empowered throughout their journey. So he created this workbook, and you can see, I believe you can see it on your screen, but don't worry, we're going to send you a copy afterwards. And it's actually fillable. So it's fillable online. It's real simple. You don't have to print it and type it. I mean, print it with the pen. You can actually type it out. And so it's nice and clean and you can keep track of it. And this workbook serves as a central place to track your symptoms, your medications, your doctor visits. It has cognitive assessments, lab work, and brain imaging results. So you could have something central that really helps. Anytime you go to a provider and they ask you your questions, and sometimes you feel like you're on a timer, right? You're like, I don't know, I don't remember, even for family members. So this is a really nice tool that you have something tangible to share with them and even track what tests you've got done, when you got them done. And one thing I especially appreciate about this resource is that it acknowledges a common challenge many families face. Memory concerns are often dismissed as just aging. You've heard it from many people today. And this roadmap helps individuals organize those experiences, communicate their concerns more effectively, and feel more confident when speaking with loved ones and medical professionals. Most importantly, this tool empowers you to be an active participant in your health journey. Whether memory changes are related to normal aging, a treatable condition, or something more serious, having your information organized can help you move forward with greater clarity and confidence. So we're grateful to Ed Chambliss and the American Memory Loss Foundation for their dedication to improving education and support for individuals experiencing memory concerns. And we're proud to partner with them in bringing this valuable resource to our community. Thank you, and we hope you find the Memory Loss Roadmap helpful on your journey. So, as I shared, we will be able to provide this to you after the conference, and we hope to sometime in the future have it online so that you can have access to it and fill it out at your own discretion, or maybe share it with other family members that you may be concerned about. But yes, so again, this is just one of the tools that we're now using to help get people diagnosed early and as accurately as possible. And so thank you again to Ed Chambliss. And I am running a little short on time, so I was going to point out some of our groups, but they're going to be in your packet, and you all have our information. But we have great programs. Like we mentioned, the Memory Club, which is an educational support group, and it's for the person experiencing memory loss and their care partner. And we also have some new programs that we'd like you to check out when you receive our email in regards to more social engagement groups for early stage folks. We have a memory mingle hour. We have a lot of activities for everybody that this affects their journey. So we were going through the document, as you can see real fast, some of the things that we have. And so we're going to make sure that you have access to all this information. But I really want to make sure that we have time right now to start our final speaker, Dr. Trin. He's always a crowd favorite. And so, like I said, he's really engaging and it's a very much question and answer. So, again, I want you to have the most time that you can with him. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dung Trin, a nationally recognized physician, brain health expert, and longtime advocate for healthy aging. He's always a crowd favorite at our conference. He's known for making complex topics easy to understand and engaging for everyone. His presentation today will be very interactive. It's a Q&A, giving you the opportunity to get the latest information on brain health and have your question answers directly by an expert. So welcome, Dr. Trin. Thank you so much for being here today and for always sharing your time with us. I wanted to do something just a little bit different. I just wanted to open up the conference with an important question, and it's a very simple one, but a common one. And people always say, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Some people, it's really hard for them to understand. They'll even say, well, good thing I don't have Alzheimer's, but I have vascular dementia. And so, can we just start off that conversation to share really what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the invite to come join you guys here. Happy Saturday. The difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. Dementia is a big umbrella of all conditions that affect our cognition, our memory. Uh, and so, under this big umbrella, Alzheimer's take up probably two-thirds of the umbrella. Is how significant it is. So the other one-third of dementia is non-Alzheimer's dementia, where you can have Lewy body dementia or frontotemporal lobe dementia, dementia from Parkinson's disease. So there are vascular dementia. So there are other dementias, but Alzheimer's take up the bulk of it, two-thirds. Having said that, we are seeing oftentimes what we call mixed dementia, a little blend of this versus that. So it's not always black and white, but we know that Alzheimer's take up the bulk of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Trin. I just wanted to get that out of the way and let everyone know we serve everybody and all types of dementia, not just Alzheimer's. So it looks like we're already starting to get questions in the chat. Did you want to control the chat, Dr. Trin, or would you like me to point out
Yeah.
any questions?
No, just give me visibility to the general everyone chat box. I'm gonna have my chat box open here. So as I am speaking, I can see your comments, your questions, your thoughts, and I'll address them as we can. Does that sound good? Yeah. Um,
Yes.
type
So
in,
everyone use the big chat. So the Q&A, this one, I will put your question that you just put it in the Q&A box. I'll put it right here, and you guys can use the main chat for Dr. Trin, and I'll step out of the way.
got it, got it. All right. So, hello again, everyone. If you are familiar with uh, how to use the chat box, type in yes so that I know you're familiar with using the chat box. Type in yes in the chat box. I want to make sure that everyone here is familiar with the chat box with that. Okay, very cool. All right. Looks like everyone is familiar with that. How many of you guys are aware that in Southern California, Alzheimer's is the third leading cause of death? How many of you guys are aware of that? Uh, it is a epidemic that is silent. It is an epidemic that nobody really wants to talk about, nobody wants to bring up, but it is definitely something that we see. Does anyone know the number one cause of death? Does anyone know the number one cause of death? Type in what you think the number one cause of death is. Right. Heart disease, stroke. Okay, good list here. Good list of different answers. Absolute heart disease is number one. Heart disease is number one. Does anyone know the number two cause of death? What is the number two cause of death behind heart disease, guys? What do you think is the number two? I see a few different things here with that. Okay, it looks like the number two, the most common answer I'm seeing here is cancer, and that is correct. So the number two cause of death that we are seeing, probably nationally, not just locally, but nationally, the number one cause of death is a heart attack, heart disease. Number two is cancer, and locally in our area, number three is Alzheimer's disease. So. So just to say that this is an epidemic, that is why Alzheimer's Los Angeles exists, and it exists because of this epidemic that we see. Now, how many of you guys are familiar with the Alzheimer's plaque? If you've heard of the Alzheimer's plaque, type in yes. If you've heard the plaque, type in yes. Yeah. Let's get a little deeper. Let's get a little deeper. What is the name of the plaque? Does anyone know the name of this plaque? All right. We have an educated crowd here. Yes, amyloid plaque, beta amyloid plaque. Absolutely. Okay, so So the plaque, the amyloid plaque, the beta amyloid plaque is the name of this protein that builds up in every brain with Alzheimer's. So if you have Alzheimer's, you have the plaque, right? The beta amyloid plaque is present in the brain 100%. If the plaque is not in your brain, if you don't have the amyloid plaque in your brain, no Alzheimer's, period. Does that make sense to you guys? If there is no plaque, there's no Alzheimer's, period. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? And the plaque is different than the gene. Okay, I see a few comments here about the ApoE4 gene. The gene is different. The gene means you have the genes that increases the risk to develop Alzheimer's. But what we know about genetics is this. If you have the gene, this ApoE4 gene, if you have the gene, it does not condemn you to the diagnosis. Okay? Why is that? If you have the gene, it does not condemn you to the diagnosis. Why is that? Anyone know? Anyone know why having the gene does not guarantee that you're going to get Alzheimer's? Because lifestyle, because lifestyle is important and sometimes, oftentimes, more important than your genetics. Okay? Nature versus nurture. Absolutely. Lifestyle is absolutely as important, if not more important, than genetics. And the opposite, the corollary is true. If you do not have the gene, if you do not have the ApoE4 gene, does it guarantee that you will not get Alzheimer's? Right? If you do not have the gene, does it guarantee that you will not get Alzheimer's? All right, I see a whole list of no's here, and that is correct. That is correct. Because we have seen Alzheimer's in folks who don't have the Alzheimer's gene. Okay, so genetics is important, but I want to emphasize that lifestyle is very significant. And as Mike says here, nothing is guaranteed with that. So a little bit different from the gene and the genetics. So here's another question for you guys. This plaque that builds up in our brain, this Alzheimer's plaque, this amyloid plaque, by the time somebody has their first problem with their memory, and this is a timeline to memory problems, okay? Memory problems are here. This is a timeline to the memory problems. How long has this plaque been building up in our brains? How long has the plaque been building up in our brains, this amyloid plaque? How long, guys? Throw in some numbers. I see 10 years, decade, 15, 20, vice versa, decades. Yeah, so this plaque has been building up in our brains for around 20 years, 2 decades, 20 years. By the time you start having memory problems, 20 years of plaque buildup. Okay? Does that make sense so far for you guys? Type in yes if that makes sense. Type in yes if that makes sense. I want to make sure that I'm not losing anyone in the science. Okay? We're going to get a little deep in the science so that I want to make sure nobody gets lost. All right. So so let's say you started having memory problems at around age 70 due to Alzheimer's disease, right? Let's say you start having memory problems at around age 70 due to Alzheimer's disease. Subtract 20 years, the plaque's been building up at around age 50. Okay? So that's the answer. One of the questions there at what age does plaque building up? When you start having memory problems due to Alzheimer's, whatever age that is, subtract 20 years. At around 20 years earlier, the plaque has been building up. Pretty crazy when you think about it, that the biomarker, the pathology of Alzheimer's, is building up for about 20 years before it causes problems, before it causes problems in our brains. And here's a little bit more science about the plaque. So I have another question for you guys. How many brain cells do we have? How many neurons? How many brain cells do we have? Okay. Does anyone know how many brain cells we have on average? On average, I see 1,000 brain cells. That's it, Teresa. I see billions. I see hundreds of billions, 2 billions. Okay. Any guesses, guys? Somebody says no idea. Millions. Okay. We have, on average, around 86 billion brain cells. Okay. We have, on average, 86 billion brain cells. And by the way, I'm going to get to the lifestyle section. Okay. I want to do the science first. And once we talk about the science, we'll talk about the way to diagnose, the blood tests, and all that. And then we'll talk about what we can do without taking a prescription. Okay. What we can do initially without taking prescription. Does that sound good for you guys? Yeah. So 86 billion brain cells in an average brain. And so every time you're thinking, every time you have a thought, your brain cells, they are talking to one another. They are communicating with one another. They're having a chat. So every thought, every time you're thinking, brain cells are connecting, talking, communicating. Every feeling that you have, okay, every emotion is simply patterns of brain cells connecting, and every memory that we have is a group of brain cells connecting. Every thought, every feeling, every memory, groups of brain cells talking, connecting, communicating with each other. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Type in yes if that makes sense. I want to make sure that I haven't lost anyone. Type in yes if that makes sense. Brain cells are talking, they're communicating, they're interacting. Every time you have a thought, a feeling, or a memory, okay, brain cells are connecting. So this plaque, this Alzheimer's plaque, this amyloid plaque that builds up in our brain, what it does is this. It gets in the way between two brain cells trying to communicate. It gets in the way and it blocks the brain cell's ability to communicate. And in the beginning, when there's not a lot of plaque, just a little bit, no big deal. The brain cells get around that. And so the symptoms are really just mild, right? Forgetting little things, names, words, things of that. So little things, not anything big. But over time, as plaque builds up, as plaque continues to build up, the brain cells can't really get around that anymore. And so your symptoms get worse. And now you're cooking and you forget to turn off the stove. Or the keys are now in the refrigerator and you don't know why. Or you're driving and all of a sudden you forget how to get home. And it's the same path you've been taking every year, right? And so as the plaque builds up, these brain cells can no longer connect because the plaque interrupts and it gets in the way between brain cells trying to talk to each other. And when that happens, memory loss happens. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Type in yes if that makes sense to you guys. I want to make sure that I haven't lost anyone here with that. So everyone's with me so far? Good, good. Okay. So that's the plaque. That's the amyloid plaque. What it does is that it builds up 20 years before your first memory loss, and it gets in the way between brain cells trying to communicate. It blocks the communications. Brain cells can't talk, and we start having problems as a result of that. But it starts 20 years before you get in trouble with your memory. So that's the crazy part, right? Is that this disease starts for 2 decades. And when it starts in 2 decades before your memory problem, for 20 years, guess what? As this is building up, your memory is still perfect. No memory problems during the 20-year buildup. You're feeling fine. You have no symptoms. That's kind of the scary part behind all this, right? It takes about 20 years before the damage starts to kick in, before the first symptoms start to kick in. It's been building up silently and quietly, this plaque. Now, There is a second protein. There's a second protein that is associated with Alzheimer's. Does anyone know the name of the second protein besides the amyloid plaque? Anyone know the name? All right, let's see here. You guys are an educated group. Wow. Usually, when I'm in the community asking this question, nobody knows about tau. Everyone knows about the plaque, but you guys are an educated group with that. Yes, so tau. So let me tell you about tau. Let me tell you about tau. Okay. Tau is a protein, and it's actually a normal protein. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a healthy, normal protein. And the tau protein lives inside of the brain cell. Okay. The plaque, the amyloid, lives outside of the brain cell. The tau protein, which is healthy and normal, it lives inside of the brain cell. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Type in yes if you know the difference now. Tau lives inside the brain cell. The plaque is outside the brain cell. Okay. So what does tau do? Like, why is it there? Or, what's it doing hanging out inside the cell? Okay. Inside of our cell, there are many structures in the cell, and one of the structure of the cell is called the microtubules. Okay, microtubules. These are these hollow tubes that form lattices inside the cell. So it crisscrosses throughout the cell, and what it does is that it helps the cell to keep its structure. The infrastructure of the cell is held up by these lattices called microtubules. Okay. And the other thing microtubules do is that they're like information highways where information can go up and down throughout the cell. The tau protein makes up the structure of the microtubule, right? The lattices, the structure of the microtubule, the tau protein is part of that structure. Nothing wrong with it, normal, healthy. Okay? Does that make sense so far to you guys? That the tau protein is healthy, is part of these microtubules that make up the lattices, the infrastructure of the cell. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Now, let's take it in next step. In Alzheimer's disease, in Alzheimer's disease, there is a phosphate group, a phosphorus group that binds binds to the tau protein and connects to it. Okay, you got the tau protein, it's hanging out, it's healthy, it's part of the microtubule. The phosphate group goes and binds to it. Okay, it binds to the tau. We call that the phosphorylation of tau or p-tau. Okay, you guys connecting it? P-tau, right? Everyone's heard of p-tau 217, the blood test and all that. So, so phosphate group, phosphorus group binds to the tau protein. And when it binds to the tau protein, what happens is this. It dislodges the tau protein from the microtubule. It pops off the protein from the lattice, from the infrastructure, right? So the tau protein pops off and it falls off. And as it falls off in Alzheimer's disease, tau protein binds, right? Falls off, phosphorus group binds with tau, it falls off, it pops off, it pops off. So you have these infrastructure of the cell, these lattices that have its infrastructure now weakened because tau is falling off of that lattice. Does that make sense so far? Does that make sense so far to you guys? Okay. The phosphorylated tau pops off the infrastructure, these lattices called microtubule. So let me ask you a question. When you have enough tau popping off and falling off the infrastructure of the cell, these microtubules, what happens to the infrastructure of the cell? What happens to the rebars, these that keeps the cell shape and form? What happens when you have tau popping off it? Yeah, what do you guys think happens? Yes, it weakens, it collapses. Yes, yes, it deteriorates. So as tau is popping off, phosphorylated tau is popping off, it starts to tangle up, right? The tau proteins start to tangle up, which is why we call it tau tangles. Have you guys heard of the word tau tangles? Amyloid plaque and tau tangle. Have you guys heard that term, tau tangle? Do you understand now why we use that term, tau tangle? It's because the tau protein is now tangling up inside of the cell. And as the tau protein tangles up inside the cell, as the infrastructure of the cell gets weakened, it collapses. This leads to the death of brain cells. This leads to the death of brain cells. And so the medical term we use for it is neural degeneration. Brain cells are dying, they're going away. Okay? Um, and and as Elsa has mentioned, over time in Alzheimer's disease, we lose brain cells that are never, ever coming back. Time is brain. Does that make sense to you guys? If that makes sense, type in yes. Type in yes if that makes sense. I want to make sure I haven't lost anyone here with that. Good, good, good. Excellent. Okay. So let's redo my timeline. Okay. Let's redo my timeline. So there are these questions here. Why don't they test early? Why aren't we testing early? Great question, guys. Why aren't we testing early? Okay. Let's redo my timeline. You got memory problems here, right? You got memory problems here. You got the timeline 20 years before memory problems, amyloid plaque starts to build up. Okay. Perfect memory. Your memory is still fine. You don't start having memory problems till here, but for 20 years, your memory is still doing good as the plaque is building up. Now, amyloid plaque builds up first. And then a few years later, the tau tangle starts to form. The reason the phosphate group binds to the tau tangle, the reason that the phosphate group bind to the tau is due to the presence of the amyloid plaque. The presence of the plaque stimulates the phosphorylation of tau. And when tau gets phosphorylated, it pops off, it weakens the infrastructure, it tangles, it causes cell death. Okay? So, first memory loss here, 20 years before, amyloid plaque starts to build up. A few years later, the tau tangle starts to build up. Okay? But guess what? Your memory is still perfect because you don't have memory problems until here. So, a number of years later, tau tangle builds up. It builds up after the plaque. The plaque builds up first. A few years after tau tangle builds up over here, brain cell death, neural degeneration. You are losing brain cells while your memory is still perfect because memory loss does not start until here. Neural degeneration starts years before memory loss starts. What I'm really saying is this. By the time somebody has their initial memory problems, several years of brain cell death have already occurred. Several years of neurodegeneration has already occurred by the time somebody has their first memory loss. Does that make sense to you guys? Type in yes if that makes sense. Type in yes if that makes sense. By the time somebody has their first memory problem, we have had years and years of brain cell damage, okay? Brain cell death, neurodegeneration. So when you go to your doctor and you tell them, doctor, my memory isn't perfect, and the doctor says, don't worry about it. You're, in your 60s, you're in your 70s, don't worry about it. The answer is they should probably do something about it and not tell you just come back in 6 months, right? Does that make sense to you guys? Type in yes if that makes sense. It is a problem today. The reason Alzheimer's is the number three cause of death and getting worse is because when our symptoms are only mild, what do we blame it on? When our symptoms are only mild, what do we blame it on? What do we blame it on, guys? We blame it on age. We think it's normal because we're getting older. So we expect to have problems with our memory because we're getting older. And as we are blaming it on age or stress or whatever else we're blaming it on, the plaque builds up, the tangle builds up, and we continue to lose brain cells as we are blaming it on age. It is time to stop blaming it on age. Does that make sense? We have to be proactive. We have to be proactive because if we're not going to be proactive, the doctor isn't going to ask. If you're not going to be proactive, the doctor isn't going to ask. So let me ask you this. How many of us on an annual basis, every year, how many of us have an annual memory test? Yes or no? How many of you get annual memory tests? Yes or no? Yes or no? Right? Take a look at the answers. Right? Take a look at the answers. Most of it is no. Most of it is no. And so if we are not looking, if we are even not looking for the diagnosis, how would we even know to be proactive if we're not even looking? Okay? And so my encouragement to you is that when you get your annual physical, your annual wellness exam, or even don't even wait for a physical. If you haven't had a memory assessment, simply ask your doctor, can you check my memory? Because a physical exam should not stop at the neck. Does that make sense? A physical exam should not stop at the neck. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? This needs to be checked. Now, the question is, at what age should we check? At what age should we check? If you start having memory concerns, there is no age limit where you should like, oh, I'm not old enough yet, right? If you start having memory concerns in your 50s or if you're 60, just tell your doctor, right? And ask for a memory assessment. Now, Medicare does have what's called the Medicare annual wellness visit, where in that annual wellness visit, there is a memory assessment, a cognitive assessment that's embedded in that visit. So that starts at age 65, though, right? But I wouldn't necessarily wait till you're 65. If you notice memory problems in your early 60s, your 50s, just ask, right? Just tell the doctor and ask for an assessment with that. And and so the problem goes both ways, guys. The problem goes both ways. The patient culturally, historically believes and was taught that as we get older, we expect memory loss. So our patients don't bring it up because they think it's just part of aging. But the problem is also from the health system side. When you have, your 10 minutes, 15 minutes, how many minutes do you have with your doctor? Type in how many minutes do you normally get with your doctor when you see them? How many minutes do you normally get? I see 15, 20. Oh, you're lucky if you get 20. 5 minutes. So they actually have surveyed patients nationally, and on average, seeing a primary care doctor, you get about 10 minutes. Um, you may be allotted like 15 or 20 minutes, but usually part of that time is taken up by the nurse who is taking your vital signs, your blood pressure, your weight, and all that. So that 15, 20 minutes kind of squeezed down so that by the time the doctor walks in, right, you get a little bit less time than that. But on average, about 10 minutes nationally. And so when you have a crunch in time, the doctor is dealing with your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your diabetes, putting in referrals, reviewing your lab results. And as a result of that, there's like no time left to talk about your memory. That's part of the problem. It's a systemic problem from the health system, and it's a problem for just believing that aging is part of normal, memory loss is part of normal aging, which it is not. So you can see why this is becoming a problem and why this is an epidemic. Now, how do you diagnose? How do you diagnose? How do you look for the plaque? I've seen a few thoughts here about blood tests. Yes, there is now a FDA approved blood test. And I also see, let me see, somebody wrote in PET scan. Yes, we now have FDA approved brain scans. They are called amyloid PET scans. Okay. You can also do what's called a CSF. It's a spinal tap where they stick a needle in your spine, pull out some fluid, look for the plaque. Uh, I'm seeing comments like, no way, Jose. Okay. So nobody wants a spinal tap, huh? Uh, we do have brain scans now. These are PET scans. We do have blood tests that is now available called the p-tau 217 that is approved by the FDA. There's many different vendors of this blood test, and many of them are going to the FDA in the next few years for approval. Um, so it used to be where doctors, the way we diagnosed Alzheimer's was what I call a rule out. Rule out. It's not this, it's not that. I've ruled this out, I've ruled that out. You have memory loss. I've checked your brain, I've checked an MRI, it looks normal. It's not that. I checked your vitamin B12, your thyroid, it's not that. So therefore, it could be Alzheimer's, but it was always a diagnosis of exclusion. We had to exclude this, we had to exclude that, and therefore our guess is that it must be or it may be Alzheimer's. It was more like an educated guess back in the old days, is how Alzheimer's was diagnosed. Does that make sense so far to you guys? Like back then when we didn't have a blood test or a brain scan, it was just an educated guess. Like it may be Alzheimer's. I'm not sure. I'm not confident. It's not this. It's not that. Therefore, it may be, right? It's a rule out diagnosis. But today, with the availability of PET scans, the availability of blood work, Alzheimer's is no longer a rule out diagnosis. We can now rule in and be more confident with the diagnosis based on a comprehensive workup that includes memory assessments, physical exams, ruling out other conditions, and confirming the presence of the plaque with either the brain scan or the blood test. We can now be confident in the diagnosis. The blood test is around 90% accurate, right? The sensitivity rate, the specificity is in the 90 percentage whiles. But I want to tell you one other thing about the blood test. You cannot make a diagnosis of Alzheimer's on the blood test alone, okay? Because we can detect the p-tau 217, we can detect the presence of the plaque while you still have good memory, while your memory is still perfect. And if your memory is still perfect, that is not a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, okay? It's it's a diagnosis of, yeah, we see the pathology that can lead to the diagnosis at some point. But Alzheimer's is defined by the presence of the plaque along with cognition changes and the changes in function and your independence and your activity of daily, living and all that. The functional decline is how we make that diagnose Alzheimer's. So if you don't have functional decline, if you're independent, if your memory's perfect, and you have a positive blood test, that is not a diagnosed Alzheimer's. Does that make sense to you guys so far? You can't rely on just a blood test. Does that make sense? Okay, I don't want people to like freak out when you go and get a blood test and it's positive and you run away, fearful that you now have the diagnosis, right? The blood test is part of a comprehensive evaluation with that. Okay? Yeah, not based on one test. based on a evaluation of your independence, your memory assessment, and all that. It's not a simple blood test that gives you a diagnosis with that. So I want to clear that up so that you guys are familiar with the blood test. Now, how many of you guys actually want to know? How many of you guys actually want to know if you have the plaque or not? Yes or no? How many of you guys actually want to know? Hmm, that's a lot of yeses here. Why do you want to know? Aren't you scared? Aren't you scared? Why do you want to know? Why do you want to know? Yeah, I see early intervention, unsure, awareness. I see very scared, early detection, prevention. All right. Okay. So let me go through the let me go through this. If there was absolutely nothing we can do other than accept our fate of Alzheimer's, why would anyone want to know if there's nothing we can do, right? If you're like, oh, I've been diagnosed, there's nothing I can do, I'm just gonna go and mourn the rest of my life. Why would I want to know, right? Nobody want to know. But there's a lot that we can do now. Other than the two FDA medications already approved, designed to, remove the Alzheimer's plaque. Other than that, I want to focus on the importance of lifestyle, of what we can do today without taking a prescription. Does that sound good to you guys? What we can do today without taking a prescription. If that sounds good, type in yes. Okay. Do you guys know that there are at least 14 conditions that contribute to up to 45% of global dementia? Like almost half of all dementia is contributed by 14 conditions, and these 14 conditions are all connected with lifestyle. Okay, has anyone heard that before? Type in yes or no if you heard that. There are 14 conditions that are connected to up to 45% of global dementia. Okay, and whether and ideally, and this has been published in a medical journal called The Lancet, um, and and this is all evidence-based information. Now, are you guys ready for the 14 conditions? Everyone has pen and paper? Does everyone have pen and paper? Type in yes if you're ready to take notes. 14 conditions. Type in yes if you're ready to take notes. All right. Type in yes if you're ready to take note. I'll give you a minute if somebody needs to go get a pen or something. All right. Okay. Looks like everyone's ready. Looks like everyone's ready. Let's go over them. Okay. Let's go over them. The first few that I'm going to mention uh, has everything to do with circulation and factors that can mess up your circulation. Because anything that messes up your circulation, anything that blocks your blood flow, can increase your risk for Alzheimer's. Make sense so far? Anything that messes up your circulation can increase your risk for Alzheimer's. So let's go through that first. There's a question, could it be emailed to us? Yes, I can email it to you as well. Okay, I can get it emailed to you guys as well. So number one, high blood pressure. Those who have high blood pressure, those who have a high blood pressure that's not under good control have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than those who have normal blood pressure. Okay? Does anyone here know their blood pressure numbers? You guys should all know your blood pressure numbers, okay? And whether it's under control or not. So, uncontrolled high blood pressure, increased risk of Alzheimer's. Number two, number two, diabetes. Diabetes. Now, when you think of diabetes, you don't think initially of like circulation. You think of like high blood sugar, right? But why do diabetics die? Why do diabetics die? What kills a patient with diabetes? It is stroke and heart attack. Stroke and heart attack, right? Common reason why diabetics pass away. And so what this means is that the end result of uncontrolled high blood sugar is circulation. It clogs up the arteries that leads to a heart attack or a stroke. And this is concerning. This is concerning because in the United States, at least half of us are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. Half of America is either diabetic or pre-diabetic. Maybe this is why Alzheimer's is an epidemic, nationwide, right? Um, because of that risk for diabetes with that, and diabetes boiled down to really just lifestyle, right? Nutrition, diet, exercise, and things of that sort. Same with blood pressure, oftentimes with that modifiable lifestyle. Okay, if I took 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 8 of those 10 have high blood pressure, 4 of those 10 have diabetes. Okay, so that's second risk factor. Third risk factor is high LDL cholesterol. High LDL cholesterol. Does everyone here know their cholesterol numbers? Type in yes if you know your cholesterol numbers and no if you don't. Okay. If you don't know your cholesterol numbers, make sure you do. If you don't know your cholesterol numbers, make sure you do. And I'm talking about the bad cholesterol. I'm talking about the bad cholesterol. I'm not talking about like the good cholesterol because there's good cholesterol, there's bad cholesterol. The bad cholesterol is the LDL cholesterol, the triglycerides. Those are the bad one, right? And everyone knows the good cholesterol, the HDL. We're talking about the bad cholesterol. Did you know? Did you know that if your LDL is at 130, okay, compared to somebody whose LDL is, let's say, at around 70, okay, so you got two-person, LDL 130, LDL 70. The person with the LDL of 130 has around a 30% higher risk of Alzheimer's than the person with the LDL of 70. Do you guys get that? The person with an LDL of 130 has around a 30% higher risk of Alzheimer's than the person with the normal LDL of around 70 with that. So make sure you know your numbers. Make sure you live the lifestyle, the diet, the exercise to get your cholesterol down. If needed, there's always a prescription, right? With that. Are you guys following me so far? Because cholesterol clogs up your circulation, right? Diabetes clogs up your circulation. Blood pressure clogs up your circulation. These are all circulation issues. The fourth one, the fourth one is being overweight. Being overweight is a risk factor. Okay. A good LDL level is normally under 100. If you have heart disease and things of that sort, we want it even lower, like around 70 or lower. But usually under 100 is what we want. Unless you have heart conditions, then we want it even lower. Okay. Overweight, obesity is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. And it's not just a risk factor for Alzheimer's alone. I don't know if you're aware. Being overweight and obesity is a risk factor for 13 cancers as well. There are 13 cancers that are linked to obesity. Alzheimer's is linked to obesity. Okay? So, this is a problem because in the United States, 2 out of 3 of us are either obese or overweight based on a metric called the BMI, the body mass index, right? Now, 2 out of 3 of us could lose some weight, could use losing some weight to get down to a good range. Because when you gain weight, it is a state of inflammation. Inflammation. Okay. Obesity is a state of inflammation. Inflammation, not good for the brain, not good for the heart, not good for the body, not good for Alzheimer's. Make sense so far, guys? Make sense so far? Good. What number is that? What number are we on? You guys take notes? What number are we on? We just finished 4. Okay, cool. We're on number 5. All right. Okay, you gotta keep me up to date because my memory isn't that great. Okay. So we did, let me see, blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, obesity. Okay, four. Okay, number five. Lack of exercise is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Those who exercise on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't exercise. Those who exercise on a regular basis have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't exercise. How much exercise am I talking about? We recommend about half an hour a day, right? We recommend about half an hour a day. There are statistics that say you get like 150 minutes a week, but it's hard to kind of measure 150 minutes a week. So I just tell folks do half an hour a day, right? And you get to that 150. You don't have to run or jog or do anything strenuous. Even a brisk walk is good with that because you want to get your heart rate up a little bit because when your heart rate is up a little bit when you're exercising, what are you improving to your brain with exercise, guys? What are you improving to your brain with exercise? Yeah. Yeah, you're improving your circulation. You're improving your blood flow, more circulation, better for the brain, lower risk for Alzheimer's. Excellent. Oxygen, yes, 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 blood flow. Excellent. Are you seeing like the links here between circulation and Alzheimer's? Are you seeing the links here between circulation and blood Alzheimer's? We want good blood flow, okay? As a matter of fact, what's interesting is this. Many people don't realize this, but the same risk factors that lead to a heart attack, they're the same risk factors that lead to Alzheimer's. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, lack of exercise, obesity, right? They're the same risk factors, guys. So if you want to lower your risk for Alzheimer's, simply lower your risk for heart attack. Does that make sense so far? If you want to lower your risk for Alzheimer's, try to lower your risk for heart attack because they share the same risk factors, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But yeah, they share the exact same risk factor. Maybe this is why heart attacks is number one cause of death, and Alzheimer's is number three. Maybe that's why they're so close because they have the same risk factors, right? Maybe that's why with that. Okay, next one. Next one. The next three is going to be about toxicity and toxins. Air pollution is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Those who live in cities with high air pollution have a higher risk for Alzheimer's than those who live in cities with low air pollution. Okay? Because that's toxins, that's toxicity that we breathe in and things of that sort. Let's say you're like, oh my, I'm stuck. I can't move, right? I'm already here and then the air is not that great. What can I do about it? Well, maybe you should consider, I don't know, maybe you consider air filter in the house, air purifier, things of that sort, things that kind of keep that air clean if you spend most of your time indoors, right? Filters and things of that sort. Um, so air pollution is a risk factor. The next risk factor, the next toxin is smoking, right? No surprise there. Smokers have a higher risk of just about everything, right? From heart disease to cancer and absolutely to Alzheimer's as well. So that's another risk factor. The third toxin is alcohol, right? Excessive alcohol use is a risk factor. And I know this is controversial because, for some folks like their glass of wine a day and and normally it's really about excessive alcohol use. Is normally what I talk about. Somebody wants to know what is excess. So So normally I tell folks, a glass of, I don't know, a glass of red wine a day, historically was okay. Although I think some of the later data shows that even a glass of red wine is not that great, or any alcohol as well with that. So if you're somebody who drinks a glass a day, make sure it's not this glass, right? Make sure it's not that glass. Maybe this glass, maybe like that glass, like 4 ounce, right? Not that glass because it's all relative. But alcohol is absolutely a risk factor, along with smoking and air pollution. All right. Good, good, good. No, they're each one of them are 1 point. They're not all six. So where are we at now? So that's another three, right? Where are we at now? Okay, we're at nine. We're at nine. Okay, cool. All right. Next one. Traumatic brain injury. Traumatic brain injury. I see it more in folks who did a lot of sports when they're young. Football, boxing, um, sports where there's a higher risk of banging your head. Okay. Traumatic brain injury is a risk factor that we have seen due to the inflammation from the trauma and the brain damage and all that from getting the head banged. Okay. Traumatic brain injury. E-bikes. Ooh, e-bikes. Yeah. Oh, okay. So hopefully nobody's falling off their e-bike. Now, the next one is social isolation. Social isolation is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. I've seen a study where folks who retire, and this has been published, folks who retire, if they retire and they go and they volunteer in the community, they have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than somebody who retires and stays home all day, not socializing. So those who socialize, those who interact with others, those who go out and live life have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who are home alone all day. Does that make sense to you guys? Does that make sense to you guys? Type in yes if that makes sense. Because when you're socializing, you are using what? When you're socializing, you are connecting your brain cells. Your brain cells are talking, communicating, chatting, right? When you're socializing, doing all that. When you're home alone all day, you're not socializing, you're not connecting brain cells, and so not good. The brain's like a muscle. You have to use it or lose it. Okay, the brain's like a muscle. You have to use it or lose it. And when you're socializing, you're using your brain. Uh, does having a cat or dog help with social isolation? Or does it have to be humans? Ooh, I guess you talk to your cats and socialize with it or your dog, but uh, I don't know. It's a good one. But you know what? If your dog or cat talks back, that's not good. Okay. With that. All right, now, these 14 conditions lead up to 45% of global dementia. Now, somebody says Zoom is good too. Yeah, Zoom is good. You guys are socializing now, right? You're socializing with me, you're interacting on the chat box. Probably not as good as in person, but better than nothing at all. Now, next risk factor is hearing loss. Those who have hearing loss that is not corrected have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than those who do not have hearing loss. Okay? And this is very important because hearing loss, we often don't do anything about because sometimes it's easier to turn up the volume than wear a hearing aid. But the data shows consistently that hearing loss is a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Why is that? Why is hearing loss a risk factor for Alzheimer's? Kind of interesting, right? And the reason hearing loss is a risk factor for Alzheimer's is this. Your brain, again, is like a muscle. It needs to be stimulated. It needs to be used. Otherwise, you lose it. And the way you stimulate your brain is through your five senses: your hearing, your vision, your taste, your smell, your touch, right? Your five senses. So if you cannot hear, you're losing an entire portal of brain stimulation. Your brain's not stimulated if you can't hear. You're losing an entire portal, and as a result, an unstimulated brain leads to an increased risk for Alzheimer's. And it's the same for vision loss. Vision loss is actually another point in this 14. If you cannot see well due to advanced cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, make sure you get it fixed, right? Make sure you get it corrected. See the doctor for that. Same reason, same exact reason. If you can't see well, You're not stimulating your brain as optimally as you could. And if you're not stimulating your brain, you start to lose it. Hearing loss and vision loss, they're both factors with that. Are we good so far, guys? What number are we at? What number are we at, guys? 13. 13. Yeah, good. We're, how come you guys got different numbers? What? Okay, we're at 12. We got two more. Okay, we got two more. Next is education. Those who have a higher level of education have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those with a lower level of education. I'll say it again. Those with a higher level of education have a lower risk of Alzheimer's than those who have a lower level education. Why is that? It's not because they're smarter or they have a higher IQ. It's because they spent more years exercising their brain in school. Makes sense so far? They're building what we call cognitive reserves. Cognitive reserves, extra cushion, right, for your brain effectiveness. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to go back to school, right? You shouldn't say that. Dr. Trent Means says, I want to go back to school now, right, for more cognitive reserve. You can go and always learn something, even if you're not in school. Make sure that every day you're learning something new. Sudoku, chess, checkers. Make sure this brain is thinking. Okay. Could be a class at a senior center or a community center. Could be something to keep that brain going, keep it learning. And as you keep learning, you're building cognitive reserve. Make sense to you so far, guys, with that? All right. Good. Number 14. Number 14. Last one. Depression. Those who have depression that are not treated, not controlled, have a higher risk of Alzheimer's than those who don't have depression. And the point here is that mental health is just as important as physical health. I do not distinguish the two. Mental health is just as important because when you're depressed, those who are depressed, they stay home, they don't want to socialize, they don't want to go out, right? And so that brain's not being used, which means that brain's not being exercised. Also, when you're depressed, you tend to be stressed. You tend to be worried. You're always, always anxious, and that creates a stress hormone we call cortisol. And so, long-term cortisol that's too high from stress, from anxiety, from depression, not good for the brain either. So, can you see that everything I've listed so far is modifiable with lifestyle? Type in yes if you can tell that everything we've listed so far is modifiable through lifestyle. You can take your brain health into your own hands. You can take your brain health into your own hands. Okay, you can start today. You can start today with that. This is not something that's genetics where you just sit around and wait for Alzheimer's to come, because most of Alzheimer's and a significant part of Alzheimer's is something you can do with lifestyle. So thanks so much, guys. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Trent. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank each of you for spending your day, spending your time with us, for being a part of this important community. Please remember that Alzheimer's Los Angeles is here to support you beyond today's conference through care counseling, support groups, educational programs, and other services designed specifically for individuals with memory loss and their care partners. So thank you to our outstanding speakers, our sponsors, and staff who made today's event possible. And thank you for allowing us the privilege of being part of your journey. In the coming days, you'll receive an email with the conference recording, so if there's something you missed, no worries. The presentation materials will also be sent directly to you and resources shared throughout today's event. So please take care, stay connected, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you. I think we have a last poll if anyone wants to share just a little bit what they're going to be doing for the rest of the afternoon.
Nice.
Thank you, Dr. Tran. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Part of that keeping socialization. So stay connected, relax, maybe use some of those meditation techniques that we learned from Dr. Bruna today. Meet with friends and family, go for a walk, do something that serves you today. Enjoy the beautiful sunshine, and we hope to hear from all of you soon. Again, please reach out. We're always here to support. Thank you, everybody.